Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our February 25th, 2025 Board of Education meeting. May I ask you to please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. It's really great to see everyone here. First thing I'd like to do is get a motion to approve tonight's meeting, approval of our agenda. May I get a motion, please? Oh, look at this, everyone. Megan, I will do Henry second. All in favor? 5-0. Next up, the superintendent's report. Mr. Poole.
Thank you, Mr. President. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. For the first part of my superintendent's report, I'm going to turn it over to our ex officio student trustee, Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this month's second board meeting. Before we talk about the student report, I wanted to inform the community of my ongoing efforts to establish the National English Honor Society here at SWR. We have officially sent out English Honor Society applications and have opened up a Google Classroom. Any junior or senior who is interested in applying for the National English Honor Society can find more information on our English Honor Society classroom or by contacting me, Abigail Haverty, or our teacher advisor, Mr. Gilly. This is an exciting moment here at SWR because we have been formally recognized by the National English Honor Society, and we can now start scheduling for an induction ceremony. More English Honor Society news will be forthcoming. Now, as per usual, I like to start my student reports right with sports news. We are proud to recognize 3 outstanding student athletes who have qualified for the New York State PHSAA Track and Field Championships at Ocean Breeze. Michael Hubner continues to impress, earning his spot in the 600-meter run. Meanwhile, Logan Young and Leighton Mangiamelli have both secured their places in the high jump competition. Our relay team, consisting of Patrick Shea, Patrick Morano, Darrell Winston, Michael Hubner, and Spencer Lee, have accomplished outstanding achievements. Congratulations to all of these outstanding athletes for showcasing the hard work and dedication fostered here at SWR. The Division II Wrestling Championships were hosted right here at our very own high school. It was an exciting day filled with intense competition, and our Wildcat wrestlers made us proud. But that's not all. 4 of our wrestlers have qualified for the New York State Wrestling Championships. A huge congratulations to Thomas Matthias, Shane Cohen, Gavin Mangiano, and Jacob Conti, all of whom will be competing for state titles between February 28th and March 1st. Best of luck to these incredible athletes as they represent SWR on the biggest stage. Speaking of champions, our SWR varsity cheerleading team triumphed at the Class C Suffolk County Championships. They now will compete for the state championship. This is a huge accomplishment, and we couldn't be prouder of the dedication they've put into their season. Congratulations to our cheerleaders and their coaches. We cannot forget our girls basketball team, which is in the semifinals of the county basketball tournament. The Battle of the Buildings will take place on Thursday, February 27th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., with all proceeds benefiting Lax Out Cancer. Come cheer on the staff from your building. Finishing up with sports, varsity and JV spring sports begin on March 17th. On March 17th, with a parent meeting on March 10th. Registration is now open on Family ID. Now shifting gears to community initiative, across all of our schools here at SWR, our very own community relations class is hosting a district-wide toiletry drive. This is an opportunity for students, staff, and families to come together and donate essential hygiene products to those in need. Donations are accepted at all of our schools. Please look for the marked boxes in each school. Global Awareness is having a spring flower bulb fundraiser. 100% of their profits will be donated to the International Agency of Cancer Research. It is always inspiring to see generosity of our SWR community, and we encourage everyone to participate to make a difference. Mr. Sigerson's World of Technology class recently visited Curtis Wright Target Rock in Farmingdale. Mr. Sigerson said that students really enjoyed seeing the advanced manufacturing equipment in action and talking to manufacturing professionals. Applications for next year's student ex officio officers have been sent out. As always, there is so much to be proud of here at SWR. Thank you all for your continued support, and let's keep this momentum going.
Thank you.
Maybe I'm going to go first.
I was just going to say, I don't know if you could top Nick. Over to you, Mr. Poole.
A few announcements from around the district. Over at the middle school, spring sports are set to begin on March 24th. There'll be a parent meeting at 6 p.m. in the front gym at the middle school. And the middle school has their girls' basketball blue and gold game this Friday, February 28th at 3:30. Over at Wading River, the special Someone Dance was a wonderful success. Many thanks to all the parents, staff, and students that worked together to make it a memorable evening. The Wading River PTA Book Fair will be the week of March 3rd, along with parent-teacher conferences. Parent-teacher conference evening will be on Thursday, March 6th, and full-day conferences will take place on Friday, March 7th. Over at Miller Avenue celebrated the 100th day of school on February 24th with a variety of lessons and events throughout the day, and parent-teacher conferences at Miller Avenue are scheduled for March 4th, March 6th, March 7th, and March 11th. A few updates. The next legislative committee meeting is March 6th, so we have a commitment from Assemblywoman Giglio and Senator Palumbo to attend that meeting, at which the committee will share key aspects of the district's programs and our legislative priority, as was shared at our last meeting. We have a special education presentation this evening from Ms. Von Eschen. And tonight is our first budget workshop meeting. And I'd like to say a few words, and I'll start by sharing the big picture. Our proposed 25-26 budget stands at $89,300,000. It reflects a modest 1.29% budget increase from our current year, with a tax levy increase of 1.96% that remains compliant with state tax levy requirements. The proposed budget embodies our commitment to balancing fiscal responsibility with educational excellence, fully aligned to our strategic plan, and our mission to prioritize the individual needs of all learners so they are physically, socially, and emotionally healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged in ways that foster their personal growth. It's worth noting that over the past 6 years, our tax levy increases have averaged 1.75%, despite facing continuously rising costs across all sectors. As always, we've built this budget by methodically reviewing each line item and incorporating input from all levels throughout our district. Proud to say our facilities remain in excellent condition. Our students continue to achieve outstanding outcomes as a result of our budgeting process. We also have excellent community involvement, whether it be through participation in board committees or in ad hoc committees such as the recent committees on personal device use, artificial intelligence, and updating the strategic plan. And thank you to the community as the budget passed last year with a lot of support at 81%. Looking at what this year's budget proposal preserves, we've maintained all of our comprehensive K-12 programs that families here value so highly. Those include, and Mr. Arcuri will share a little more details in a moment, AP offerings, special education services, diverse course catalog, mental health supports, intervention programming, field experiences, art and music programs, and athletics. We've accomplished maintaining all these programs while navigating tighter financial constraints and absorbing a dramatic, almost shocking increase in transportation costs in next year's budget, which exceeds a $1.2 million increase in transportation costs for 25-26 over this year. The transportation cost alone is greater than the proposed increase to the 25-26 tax levy. Without savings and reserves, this transportation increase would have forced difficult conversations about programs. We are relying in this budget proposal more heavily on our savings than in recent years. Thankfully, we have them. As discussed at our last meeting, additionally in the budget, the district is in the process of developing a request for proposals for the implementation of armed guards, and the budget does include some space for increased security costs to cover those potential costs, which we will learn what those are a little bit later on in the school year. The financial context is important to understand. The governor's budget provides relatively flat state aid compared to this year. We all may remember that last year the governor threatened cuts to save harmless school districts. We are a save harmless school district, meaning that according to the formula, we are supposedly overfunded. We are not overfunded by state aid, but according to the state formula. Fortunately, that was not proposed in the governor's executive budget. I don't expect that to happen this year. That kind of a cut would be close to a $1 million loss in state aid. Beyond the main budget, we have two additional propositions under consideration for the May ballot. The first involves utilizing our 2021 reserve for key instructional projects. I want to express my sincere gratitude to the Space and Facilities Committee for their dedication in meeting numerous times to finalize what I believe is a truly important and impactful project list, and Mr. Arcuri will share later greater details. This 2021 reserve which was funded over time through economies and efficiencies that generated savings, has earned interest and will ultimately generate building aid, which will ultimately offset the tax levy in future years, and that's the power of capital reserves. The second proposition seeks to establish a new reserve that will serve the same purpose in the future, allowing us to capitalize on any savings we might achieve through, again, economies and efficiencies. As I mentioned, when we finalized our strategic plan this past fall, the theme guiding this budget is pretty straightforward: preserving the excellent programs we provide for our students, and this budget accomplishes exactly that. As we go through the next few budget workshops and presentations, residents that would like additional information on any and all aspects of our financial condition, all of our internal, external audit reports, fiscal transparency reports, reserve balances, that can all be found for the last so many years, and including the current year, on the district's website under the business section of the webpage. And in closing, I want to thank all our employees for their valuable feedback and contributions in developing this draft budget. A very special acknowledgement, we're lucky to have the expert that he is, goes to Mr. Arcuri, who will be presenting shortly in greater detail on the budget, for his outstanding leadership, commitment, perseverance, many long hours throughout these past 5 months of budget development. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. Next up is our opportunity for board members. I'm glad to see so many members of the community here tonight. It's great to see you in person. We hope you'll stay for the entire meeting. Tonight, we'll present, as Mr. Poole mentioned, the first portion of our 2025-2026 SWR school budget and provide an update on our special education programs. To date, we've received about a dozen emails about starting a UPK program. So in tonight's discussion, we've added an agenda item under old business where Mr. Poole will present a Q&A about the program. After Mr. Poole concludes this information, we'll invite residents up for comments. And I think Ms. Kirschis says,
Yes.
right? If you'd like to sign up, please see Ms. Kirschis to talk about the UPK topic. As a reminder, as a board, one of our goals is to ensure open communication and increase the community involvement. As a board, we believe the best decisions for our students come from the open dialogue and collaborative planning with our community. So thank you again for being here tonight. We appreciate it. With that, on behalf of the board, I would also like to clarify some misleading information and comments that we have seen on social media. Some recent posts around UPK suggest, first, the district should use reserves to fund the UPK program costs that go beyond the state grant. Back in 2018, some Board of Ed trustees also supported the district beginning a UPK program, which then had proposed using contingent funds or reserve funds. Residents overwhelmingly opposed that UPK program due to concerns about the impact on the K-12 program. Next, the district is hiding space to accommodate a UPK program, and that there's space all over the district. The district enrollment numbers that were shared only include general education, not special education, which is a significant factor to consider when considering space. So presenting this figure alone is misleading. Next, we can simply reopen Briarcliff to accommodate a UPK program. Please note that that cost back in 2020 during COVID was over $1 million just to reopen the building. It would require staffing that includes an administrator, a nurse, a clerk, and security. Additionally, new age-appropriate playground equipment and heating and cooling for occupants. Again, it's misleading to say this would be a simple solution. This evening, we plan to inform the community about UPK. However, these social media posts are not constructive and appear to try and create division within the community while reflecting poorly on the Board of Education and our administration. This approach is counterproductive and does not benefit anyone. Anyone else want to share any comments under opportunity for board members? Okay, thank you. Next up will be Mr. Poole. We'll touch on the UPK program.
I do have some
Full business.
FAQs to
Okay,
share.
great. Ricky, you have those for up on the, you don't?
No.
So what did we do with those? So are we posting them or, no, you're,
I have copies that we sent.
You don't have the,
Ricky, you don't have the presentation? February.
Okay.
I was just going to ask that. I was-
So then, I'm gonna read off of this, and,
Okay.
Ms. Kirsch,
If anyone would like
there are
to-
some hard copies if you
If
wanna
anyone would
hand.
like copies,
if you
we
wanna
have
hand
hard
those
copies
out,
here of
so-
these. Why don't you do that?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Hand
So,
those out.
I'm just gonna go ahead and
'Cause
jump
You don't
in.
have the presentation yet.
Yeah, it's okay, I think we have enough hard copies people can share. I'll be clear.
No, that's fine.
And then this will be posted to the district's website tomorrow morning for anybody to access. So it's about 19 questions. I'll go as clearly and quickly as I can. So these are some frequently asked questions regarding New York State Universal Pre-Kindergarten. Question 1, what percentage of current kindergarten registrants for next year, 25-26, indicated in kindergarten screening that their child had private preschool or that the child had special education preschool services? The answer is 93.8%. 108 of 113 indicated as such. What are the requirements for utilizing New York State universal pre-kindergarten funding? So the funding comes with a number of strings attached to it. Universal pre-kindergarten refers to a state government-funded preschool program that is free for those who attend it. A lottery is required if demands exceed available seats. The per pupil amount, which is a reimbursement to the Shoreham-Wading Central School District, would be $5,400 per student for up to 95 students that the state would reimburse us for, at a total value of $513,000. Importantly, no parent and/or guardian of a child participating in a UPK program can be subjected to a fee charged for the instructional program. So there's not the ability to offset cost and enrollment at an out-of-district location. If we're running it, we're either going to pay for the whole thing or not. Half-day programs are not permitted. So again, the program is fairly inflexible. Sections are capped at 18 students with 1 required teacher and 1 required aide for the program. And just to note, the first year the district received UPK funding for the very first time, even though it was made available to most districts in 2004 or so, was in the 2021-22 school year, and it was for 36 seats. Question 3, why didn't Shoreham-Wading River offer UPK this year at Miller Avenue or Wading River? There is a link in here to a presentation from last spring when we were reviewing UPK for next year. Only 1 room was potentially available at Wading River in 2023-24 for UPK, and no rooms were available at Miller Avenue. Did the district request proposals from vendors for the current school year, 24-25, for out-of-district seats? Yes, when we were budget planning, we did go out for RFPs to find out what the price was for out-of-district seats. So last year, right around now, 4 separate vendors responded, and they offered a total of 90 seats. The cost for 90 out-of-district seats from the 4 vendors as of February 20th, 2024, was $811,458. The New York State UPK grant would have provided $486,000. And the district cost, which would have had been carried by the budget, would have been $325,458. How was Shoreham-Wading River Central School District UPK funded over the 3 years it was offered? It was funded solely by grants. So for an example, in 2023-24, the New York State UPK grant covered $388,800. Federal COVID-19 relief grants, which you were allowed to use for preschool programming, covered the remaining cost of $80,000. Question 6, where was UPK held and how many children were served? In year 1, as I mentioned, 36 students were enrolled at St. Anselm's, and between 2022 and 2024, 72 students were enrolled annually, with 2 sections at Wading River and 2 sections at St. Anselm's, and the vendor was scoped for the Wading River program. What percentage of eligible pre-kindergarten families enrolled for the lottery? So the last year we had it in 2023-24, about 70% of eligible pre-kindergarten families indicated an interest in UPK. And ultimately, the next question, what percentage of eligible students or families were selected or enrolled in UPK? It was about 55% of the cohort of students eventually ended up with UPK. What percentage of economically disadvantaged students were awarded a UPK seat in 2023-24? No economically disadvantaged students were selected through the lottery last year for the year before for UPK in 23-24. You mentioned Briarcliff. What would it cost to use Briarcliff for UPK? So UPK for all students, and let's use the number of 140 or so, would cost about $1.5 million per year, or about $11,000 per student to host at Briarcliff. The grant would cover $500,000. and the district would need an approximate $1 million to cover annual costs. The building would need a principal, a nurse, a custodian, instructional staff, security, clerical, et cetera. So those costs would hover around that when we factor in soft costs and benefits and all those other things. And in addition to those costs, the building condition survey, also available online, there's a presentation also available on the building condition survey, includes additional capital and maintenance costs in excess of $1 million for Briarcliff. Question 11, could the high school be used for UPK? You know, we would need some further study, would be needed to identify up to 4 adjacent classrooms. You'd want the rooms together with a separate exterior access, along with any other supports that may be needed to ensure student and staff health and safety for a sort of a pre-kindergarten environment. A big obstacle in the way would be bathrooms for our pre-kindergartners. They would need to be created, and that is very, very an unlikely completed project over the summer. I'm not sure whether that's SED approvals or what would it take to either build or modify that. So further study would be needed for the high school. Has the district had declining enrollment in K through 5 over the last 4 years? If you have the document in front of you, you can see the chart in front of you. No, enrollment actually has largely flattened out. We are really looking at average class sizes between 125 to 140, really until we start to get to 2030. Our latest enrollment projection, which Mr. Hayward provided on January 7th, and can also be found on our website, shows a little bit of a look back and a look forward that we can expect from the vendor that we will see some declining enrollment between now and 2030 by about 15% in kindergarten classrooms. Right now, current cohorts range from 130 to 160 students, and you can see this, I won't read the chart, but for example, in 2021-22, kindergarten had 134 registrants, and in 2024-25, kindergarten has 130 registrants. And so the numbers are fairly similar going down, except for a grade or two where the numbers are sort of flip-flopped by 30 students. Question 13, given the cohort ranges and special education needs, what is the range of classroom usage in each elementary building required in any given year? In any given year, we need 25 to 29 classrooms. We need 18 to 21 regular inclusion classrooms, so that means sometimes the building is going to have 7 in kindergarten, 6 in first grade, and 7 in second grade. Sometimes it's going to be 6, 6, 7. In any given year, it could be 7, 7, 7. It's really based on enrollment and on needs for classroom usage. Any given year, we'll need 3 to 4 special education classrooms in both or either building. Generally speaking, we make sure we have room for 2 self-contained sections, learning center classrooms, and then 2 RISE programs, which are life skills classrooms. And that's because you want students in appropriate age bands and instruction to match their need. An art classroom, a music classroom, 1 library classroom area, and an OT-PT classroom. Question 14, what are the projected space needs for the 25-26 school year? So for Miller Avenue, I think we've been saying this for a number of years, Miller Avenue is very tight. There's, we just got music out of the library. We do expect to use 26 of 26 classrooms for next year, 19 regular or inclusion classrooms, 3 or 4 special education classrooms, and note, special education programs and placements are finalized in the spring. So IEP meetings are held, and where will students be placed happens a little bit later in the school year. So it's not a set number at 3 or 4. We can predict a little bit, but it's not completely clear until we get closer to the end of the school year. An art, a music, a library, and an OT-PT. So that uses 26 of 26 classroom spaces at Miller Avenue, maintaining our current class sizes that we've had for the last so many years. Wading River, 27 of 28 instructional classrooms are projected to be utilized for student classrooms, 19 regular classrooms, again, 3 to 4 special education classrooms, art, music, library, and OT-PT. The 1 instructional room not being used as the classroom which used to be the computer lab off of the Wading River Library, is currently being utilized as a shared resource room, so it has book stacks for shared libraries for teachers. It has shelving in there for IT support, so hot items on the shelf. There's a staging area for IT, laminator, photocopier, spare instructional technology devices, and et cetera. And I do want to confirm and assure anybody who's listening or here tonight that I personally walked the buildings after the last meeting with each principal, walking through to examine the spaces, see what spaces were available and what wasn't available for expanding programs. Is there sufficient space right now in the buildings to accommodate it? No, there really isn't. What instructional program change options could provide space for, and we could need space for a number of things, not just UPK, right? We have had summer enrollment increases. We may have additional special education classrooms, or do we want to make space for classrooms for UPK? So one option, and this anybody listening, this is not a scare tactic. These are numbers based, these are just the numbers for this year. I didn't project it to next year. So let's say last year, for Miller Avenue, the district was looking to make room in Miller Avenue for 3 UPK sections, and a decision was made. We're just going to eliminate a section in each grade. Kindergarten would this year, right now, instead of being at the current 20.5, would be at 24.6. Grade 1, which is currently 19.4. And if you see here 19.4, that means that there's so many sections at 19 and a couple of sections at 20, right? So that's what the 19.4 means. It would be 22.6 with a reduction of a classroom, and then second grade would have gone from 19.1 to 22.3. Another option would be to eliminate the separate classrooms for art and music by placing art and music on a cart for all students. And not too distant past, that may have been a decision we had to make just for expanding student enrollment to put art on a cart. Moving the occupational and physical therapy for disabled students to the stage at Wading River, not optimal for those students in the program, but possible should we need to do that. And then again, I mentioned that the room that has all of those resources in it, those would have to probably go back into the instructional tabletop area of the Wading River Library. When you walk into the right, there's a learning area there, so those stacks might go in there. That might be where we put IT support, because there really isn't much space in that building either for those types of resource and deployment needs. Question 17, how many out-of-district seats at private preschools are available for next year, and how much would that cost? So in developing the budget, Mr. Meinster did put together a proposal. We went out to RFP this fall. There are 3 local providers that indicated that they had current room for about 65 UPK students. I don't know if that's true any longer. I probably have to go back out to RFP to really lock down what's available and get their current costs. But the cost to the general fund for those 65 seats would be about $150,000 or so beyond what the grant covers. Question 18. I'm getting very close to the end. Thank you, everybody. What changes to the current UPK laws are needed? And we've been advocating this for years. Remove the per pupil cap of $5,400 and increase the grant funding. It'd be great if the grant funding increased to $11,000 per student, which would be a more realistic per pupil cost, and allow economically disadvantaged families to be provided seats first, since they aren't able to, in most cases, provide that. So those are some changes. The best would be just let us have the $513,000 with no strings attached, and I promise I will certify on any form you want that we will maximize the use of those dollars towards UPK. So I do look forward to having that conversation with our local legislators on March 6th. That definitely will be a topic of conversation. And last question, 19, what are some examples of programs the district provides that are not mandated K through 5? And I list a few here. Kindergarten, art and music, clubs, band, orchestra, chorus, theater, Chromebooks, field trips, cultural arts assemblies, and believe it or not, security guards are not mandated either. So that's a list of questions that I've gathered to hopefully put together the good answers for the community. And if other questions come, I'm happy to add to the FAQ. I will post this to the website, and when the BOE meeting highlights go out, this will be an attachment to the BOE meeting highlights, so all current families would get a copy of this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Poole.
You're welcome.
Does any of the board have any questions for Mr. Poole?
Mr. Poole, just a quick question. I think you may have addressed this in the past. Some districts get a reimbursement rate per head at a much greater rate. What is determining the reimbursement rate? So a local district gets $8,600 per student.
Economic need.
Okay.
So yes. Yep. So we're on the other end where the status says your economic need is low, so you're at the 5,400. And the problem with the $5,400 is that number was established in 2004, 2005, and it has not grown with inflation for any districts. Many, many districts are facing the issue of the grant not meeting, not filling the budget, part of the budget that it used to. It's covering ever and ever less of a percentage of the cost of UPK in their districts as well.
Thank you.
So I think, Mr. Poole, by taking us through this, I think it's clear that the district does not have space to accommodate a UPK program. So the only other option would potentially be outside, if the district were to.
I think the option for next year would really be outsourcing. I mean, I did mention that further study at the high school could be reviewed and needed. You know, you would take out a bank of 4 classrooms and you have to convert some bathrooms, find the right spot for entry and dismissal, find the right time slot. It's just a 5-hour program, so with the students come at 8:15 and leave at 1:15. So you further study is needed, but making bathroom accommodations between now and September. So if it's so, I could definitely go back and do a little more research on the high school, but it definitely needs further study, conversations with administration. What is the impact on student scheduling? What's the impact on the departments that are kind of housed together right now? So I need to do a little further, a deeper dive into what that would mean for a high school-based program.
For something in the high school, though, this would require SED review?
Most likely, yes. If we're doing any kind of significant bathroom remodification or structuring or pulling out, then it is likely that it requires an SED review.
Okay. And do they have a mechanism for expediting that? Because typically, SED review takes a while, so.
It would, I feel like it might be a single trade. It may go a little bit quicker. And again, I'm not 100% that it needs an SED review. We'd have to talk to the district architects about what changes would be needed for 4-year-olds, 3 and 4, because they would come in at 3, right? They start the year at 3. What changes would be needed at the high school for a 3 and 4-year-old program?
Okay, thank you.
But again, the assumption you're making there, Mr. Poole, is that we would be using general fund dollars to offset the grant funds.
Yes,
Kind of our
let's say you
general fund,
let's say you found 4 classrooms at the high school and the bathrooms went smoothly and the district had to lay out some capital cost. I'm not gonna throw a number out there, but nothing's cheap in school construction. So let's say we modified that, had the bathrooms for the little guys in there. And now you have the grant dollars to cover the classroom instructional areas. But the scope, I believe, is somewhere around $500 more per student over the grant. So the program would be for 72 students, if you found 4 classrooms. And then you would need to find in the budget a nominal amount of 72 times 400 or 72 times 500, say $35,000 to add to the grant to cover the vendor cost for a scope service for a program in the high school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to clarify, I want to thank Mr. Poole for walking through the buildings. He does that on a daily basis, but for the purpose of, refuting some of the accusations and making sure that, double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking. But I don't want to give the misconception that this is news to the board. We devote a lot of volunteer time to some of which is included every year, a requirement to walk each and every building. So those building walks are open to the public. The Space and Facilities Meeting Committee is specifically invited, but they're always open to the public. And during those public walkthroughs, we conduct a lot of investigation and questions. So in terms of intimately knowing the space that we have at each of our buildings, that's something that we already knew. So I just want to clarify
Yeah, no, I think that was good.
that point.
No, I agree, though. I appreciate the extra look. I was confident of what we learned in the fall, but I do appreciate the extra.
Anyone else? We're good? Okay. So, Ms. Kirschus, what we're going to do now is we're going to move on with our agenda and open it up to public comment under statements from residents for agenda items only. What I'd ask you to do is please state your name when you come up to the podium, your address, and the topic you're going to discuss. And Ms. Kirschus, how many people do we have signed up?
We have 8 right now.
Okay, 8. So what I'm going to request is that each of you, definitely we're here to hear from you and listen. Let's give you 5 minutes per person, so that would be about 40 minutes. And we'll write down some of your topics to answer at the end, so that we're not going back and forth, so we can get through all the resident comments and provide any updates that we can to you. So Ms. Kirschus, I'll turn it to you.
Okay, so we have Erica Singer and her husband, okay. If you could just state your name.
Sure, Jeff
and your
Singer.
address.
Thank you, Mr. Poole, for going through everything you went through here. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. We were here 2 weeks ago, and, we thank you guys for all your research and for your answers. I just want to clarify that this has nothing to do with budget, nothing to do with funding, nothing to do with losing any services for the existing K through 12 programs. This is simply, we do not have 2 classrooms for a UPK. Correct?
I'm not going
I
to
think
answer
he's
now.
asking a
We're going to,
question.
we're not going to ask, we're not going to answer right now. Like I
Okay,
mentioned,
so I
we're
mean,
going to do
I
5
mean,
minutes.
oh,
Sorry
sure.
to do that.
No, that's
I'll answer at the end, I promise.
Okay.
I
no,
just want to
like-
make sure we get
like
through
I said,
everyone.
I went
Yeah, no.
through
So your
nauseam
question-
all my research of all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, appreciate that.
And I appreciate you guys getting back to us so
Yeah.
quickly, from last meeting to this one. But obviously, going through all of this,
Yep.
it's not a budget problem. Like we're at, in our goal of advocating for the UPK program, when this initially came up, there was no step in taking away from anything that's already existing. And when I did the research to find out all the budget information and the fact that it's just a lack of space, we'd never say, hey, let's increase class sizes. That's not something we would ever request. We would never request going outside to other vendors, because we know that's going to double the cost of the UPK program, and that's nothing you could ask, taxpayers to take care of. Construction to the schools, like that's not something, it's not realistic. I know going to ask for $1 from the taxpayer for an elective program is not something that's really an option here, or at least not the way I'm gonna go about it in looking at this. But going through these 19 questions, it's clear that the only issue is that there's not a classroom available. And like I said, we never would want to take away from any other existing program, but it's just being clear and needs to be answered by you guys that the only problem we have, not accepting $513,000 from state aid, not having 72 kids or having 36 kids, that we just simply don't have 2 rooms. I don't know what happened with the St. Anselm's rooms that were used 2 years ago, and maybe even the years prior. I'm only familiar with 2 years ago. But that's 36 students there, and if we have a closet that apparently has a lot of, storage in it and can be used for a classroom, now you're talking 54. As Mr. Poole had stated, it's about $500 per pupil above the $5,400 that the state's offering, but that money is just turned down and given back to the state and considered a cost not accrued by the state. So I guess, and then one other question before my time runs out is, I went through the budgets for the last 2 years, and both times in the presentation, you guys had mentioned the fact that it's the grant running out that is causing the UPK program to stop. So, for example, 2 years ago, it was, okay, this is the last year of the UPK program because the grant will expire next year. That's not the case. And then the next year, it was, we don't have a UPK program because the grant run out. But again, that's not the case. So I don't understand why space, which is obviously really the only concern here, was not brought, to the attention of the parents that are looking for it. We're asking questions. Like I said, I really, really appreciate the effort and the walkthrough and stuff like that, and I'm gonna have to take that, your word for the fact that there's not 2 classrooms here, which, again, if that's the case, that's the case. But, we're getting this misconception that, we're looking to change other programs or anything that's established, or even anything on the last page of this, that's elective. Like, I would never say you need UPK before you need security guards. It's absurd. And what I think is also absurd is going back to the taxpayer for additional funding for $5,000 per kid to send them somewhere private. Again, I just would like you guys, if you can answer that question at a later time, wherever the case is. Obviously, the only issue we're sitting here is space. And I just think that unfortunately, if that's the case, then we move on with our advocacy here. And obviously, it's, a situation that we have to just deal with. But I just think all the bells and whistles of a budget problem or a grant problem, or you guys stating in budget presentations that this is, something that has expired, it's just not factual. And it's also not factual that anybody's asking to lower, to increase class sizes or take away from anybody, special needs, students that are in those classrooms that were used 2 years ago, are on a cart, all that kind of stuff. Nothing is being advocated for that. We just want to see if there's 2 classrooms that could take care of, if everything else is taken care of, 2 classrooms for, for the little ones. So that's it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Singer, appreciate it.
Mr. Poole, can I just ask you to clarify the difference between a UPK grant and COVID funds that were used that have expired? that are no longer available to pay for?
Yes, I'm
beyond-
not recollecting
you.
the presentation. The state UPK grant did not expire. The federal COVID dollars
Thank you.
expired.
And that was used to pay for the gap between the
Yes,
5,400?
so that would cover.
So it
well,
didn't come out of general
When we
fund?
had the 72 seats in 23, 24, 36 were at St. Anselm's, but St. Anselm's really was the bulk of the $80,000 to cover the additional cost above the $5,400. The two classrooms
So
at
there was
at
36.
Wading River was, 36 times 400, so.
So when we
you know,
talk about
60
expiring grant,
65,000 was needed to go to St. Anselm's for that, yes. So the expiring grant
is the
was the
COVID?
COVID-19 federal relief grants that expired, yes.
Okay, so Miss Christy Leonard, did you decide if you want to speak or not? Okay, all right, so Miss Danielle Morgan-Besser? You're up next, okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of this information. There's a lot of clarity here, absolutely. I do have a question, though. I see that we looked at the elementary schools and that we looked at the high school as a potential, but I'm sure you looked at the middle school, but is there something in the middle school rooms that might be able to be adjusted, as that's another building within our district? So that's the only question that I have, because I haven't heard about that building, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I would like just to add a little asterisk here. We are new to the district within the last year. My daughter started during first grade, my oldest daughter. And I just think that if we can, do our best, which I know you guys are trying, to have this implemented. I know my youngest daughter, doesn't have that opportunity to meet some of her little community members. And I think going into kindergarten and having that, little camaraderie is good for new children coming in, but also for us as a community of new members that have just entered. So just something to think about as well. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, and welcome. Ms. Gershon.
Okay, so next we have Daniel LaSquadra.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Dan LaSquadro, resident of Shoreham. First, I want to thank Mr. Poole and his administrative team for being so thorough by preempting so many of the questions and dealing with the reality that we face, unfortunately, with the scourge of social media. So I do want to thank you for preemptively addressing many of the questions that I think people had this evening. To a couple of the points made, one, the Princeton plan, which brought our two communities together from the earliest age, many people who've moved here recently don't know that that was not the case. I didn't meet my fellow students from Shoreham growing up in Wading River until I got to 6th grade. So, there was always that little bit of division and cliquiness throughout middle school and high school, and I think that this district is a far better place by bringing those students together when they start their educational career, and I've seen that with my children. Some of their closest friends are from the opposite townships, and that just never would have been the case. To the point of any grant or anything in a budget, they are subject to renewal. And having been a member of the state legislature, I can tell you that none of that is guaranteed. I deal with that with road funding. The state loves to put things in separate line items that are not guaranteed year to year. And I think that this board and this administration have been very wise not to count on money that may not reappear unless it is part of a base allocation. The two classrooms that were built out, for which bathrooms were added in Wading River, I know one is currently in use as a 4th grade classroom, one is currently in use for our most vulnerable student population, for our RISE program, which I think is one of the jewels that we have here. We do not outsource much of our special education. We choose to provide those services here in-house. I think it is one of the things that makes Shoreham-Wading River education such a special place, and I know that many people move here who have special needs children for exactly that reason. And I would not want to see those classrooms repurposed for something that is outside the scope of the educational process. When you have a child, I believe that pre-K is something that you make an investment in one time as a parent outside of that scope to prepare them for their educational career, to come into kindergarten more prepared, prepare them for that success. I do not believe that that is something that should be foisted upon the population to pay for that service for the rest of our lives. That is my opinion. I think that is something that, from a state standpoint, when they look at this, especially in high-needs areas where there is a greater demand for childcare, I believe that the UPK in many of these areas is used for exactly that purpose. It is put under the educational process to provide additional funding for parents to work, and they have done this on a statewide basis and drawn this down into areas where there is not the economic need. And Mr. Poole, when we discussed this 7 years ago and 3 years ago, you and I lamented the lack of a means test that the state will provide. They absolutely forbid it. I think if you were going to do this, it absolutely should be for those most in need. But the state prohibits that. So you have a lottery system, which you rightly pointed out, that there are 0% people who are in economic need of this. So you wind up with people who need it the least, who most often get it in communities like ours, where there is a very low economic need for this. I know that in Miller Avenue, which my daughter is not there anymore, but I have plenty of friends who are there. They're very happy that for the first time in separate years, they do have a separate classroom for music, that it's no longer in the library. So I'm very happy, again, that you took the time to go through all the buildings and look very carefully at those space needs. I was amused that I just had to look. I don't know if any of you remember from a few years ago when we discussed this. I did a little data mining and looked at some historical figures at what the current enrollment was at that time for the incoming kindergarten class, and extrapolated that out to what we thought would be for the incoming year. At that point, I went back in my notes, that at that time, 3 years ago, almost to the day, it was 116 students currently enrolled. When I checked just now, it's 116 students currently enrolled. So a little bit of irony that we're back here 3 years later discussing the same thing with the same numbers. And based on the historical models, I said that that year we would be looking at an incoming kindergarten class of 140. It turned out to be 141. Numbers don't lie, despite the fact that Mark Twain said there are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. Sometimes statistics can be helpful when you look back at that historical data.
Mr. LaSquadra, I'll have you,
Yes,
appreciate
that's
that.
really all I had to say about pre-K. If I could take a moment for point of personal privilege, I did want to compliment Mr. Bramoff and Charles Peterson, who won the Suffolk County Foil Championship this year for our students, my son being one of them, who competes outside of our school district with neighboring districts. I know that some people have said in the past they had felt a bit left out, and I want to compliment Mr. Bramoff for having those students feel very included this year, and really recognizing their success and the efforts that they made. I'll take off my resident hat for a moment, if you would permit me, and put on my town hat for a second, and just say that Mr. Poole and Mr. Arcuri and I have had several discussions, and I will be coming back this spring to present a plan for intersection improvements at Randall Road and the middle school. Obviously, on the roads that the town of Brookhaven controls, we have already done significant improvements in front of the Miller Avenue School, and just last year completed the project on North Country to now tie in non-vehicular pedestrian safety improvements there. And we are going to be making significant improvements on Randall Road in front of the Prodell Middle School as well. So I look forward to coming back and presenting that information to you. And again, I thank you for your time and attention this evening.
Thank you, Mr. LaSquadra.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Next up is Bridget Sajewski.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bridget Sajewski. This is my first meeting ever with the school board, so not too sure how these things go or what to expect. And I'm going to be in complete contrast and stark contrast to the gentleman that spoke before me. I have 2 young children. I moved to the area last December. At the time, my son was just turning 4, so he is currently enrolled in daycare, as well as my daughter. They're a year apart in school, so he'll be going to kindergarten next year. A week or so after we moved here is when UPK got axed. So from my budgeting perspective, I was not expecting to have, an ongoing $1,600 a month fee for daycare. I thought that that was going to be something that was going away. To my surprise, that is not the case. And now I also have my daughter who, I was hoping was going to be in UPK and now currently is not. So obviously that's why I'm here today to discuss that. Something that was brought up to the gentleman just speaking before me was the 0% were selected through the lottery for disadvantaged students awarded UPK. So I'd be curious to know how many disadvantaged students actually entered the lottery, and how the lottery really works as far as, how they're chosen, et cetera. But I think it's important when you're looking at any sort of disadvantaged students to see if they were, in fact, even trying to be a part of that lottery, right? Got to be in it to win it. Another question I did have is in regards to, obviously, we understand there's no space, but there are other institutions around here, such as Kitty Academy, such as St. Anselm's, other ones, that are putting bids in. So I think you mentioned that there are 65 seats. I'd like to know if that's per facility or if that is, if each one is offering a different amount of seats. And then I'd also like to know if the rates with those, each facilities has gone through a negotiation. You had mentioned the fall, that these were the outsourcing of, looking for these quotes, although I know that the bid was also just selected within the recent days, really. So I'd be curious to know what those actual stats are, because I think some of these numbers are arbitrary. Another number that looks relatively arbitrary to me would be that 11,000 increase. Kind of seems like a dream going from 54 to 11,000, and the math doesn't quite math. With the 65, you say the cost of general fund would be about 150,000, therefore it wouldn't actually need to be that drastic of an increase. And if we're only looking for $150,000, I would also say, in contrast to a couple of other individuals, it's a very relatively small increase to the overall budget and to overall taxpayers. When you're looking at, investing into your students overall, you're looking at also investing back into the community. And I think that is something that this growing community would consider. So I think it's something that we shouldn't make assumptions upon, but actually do the appropriate math and add it into the taxpayers and put it in their hands to kind of make some of these decisions. So I'm curious what has actually been done to evaluate that as a total number. I sell outsourcing for a living, so I'm a big believer in outsourcing. I don't see why we wouldn't outsource, so I'd want to have a better understanding. If there is that $513,000, why we'd hand it back, when it could change some lives for other students. I know from a kindergarten perspective, a lot of the individuals that are going into kindergarten, the principals of those schools are complaining to, administrators and to different members of the community that kids are not ready. So you're seeing from an onset that these kids are not prepared for kindergarten. So we're, starting the kids at a disadvantaged level. So I'd be curious to know what research has been provided there and looked into overall in the community and what the kindergarten readiness looks like. And then in regards to the other programs, I would just be curious to know how much money is invested into those programs. And again, if we're only looking for $150,000, that's a very, very small number. That's not a large, huge, it can sound like a lot of money, but overall it's not. So I'm curious what numbers there actually are here for these other extracurricular activities and other programs, and what dollars and cents can actually be pulled from them to shrink the 150,000. All right, I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Jonathan Rosario, is that correct?
Hello, everyone. Jonathan Rosario. I live in 25 Robinson with my beautiful wife and my 6 children. We moved here about 5 years ago. I come from a district where UPK is offered. So when growing up, that was an experience that I had. One of the things that I kind of want to highlight for you guys, because you guys are doing a great job leading SWR as one of the top school districts on Long Island. When you're making this decision where you have the chance right now to really make history and take some of the burdens off of parents that are working. Although the numbers say that, that this district doesn't need the help, I don't know how true that is, right? As Mr. Lasquardo said, there's cliques. People are in severe debt, and they're not opening about it. So, no one's coming up and applying for anything over here. So, on the books, SWR is a thriving community. There's no debt over here. Everyone can just afford $600 a month in childcare that would take that burden off of us, right? All I'm asking you guys right now to do is to just take in consideration the lives that you guys that are being shaped right now. The history shows that when children go to UPK, the socialization skills is better. They have higher graduating rates from just overall. It's a very good process that you guys just could really look at. We have 3 young children. Currently, I'm deciding right now whether we're going to be able to afford to send 2 of our children to private UPK at Trinity. That's a decision that now we have to really take. Can we afford to send, 2 kids to UPK, or can just everyone get together and continue the raising of the community and ensuring that the kids are taken care of at the end of the day. This is a great place to live. I love Shoreham. I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job with the school system. I just want y'all to really take a look at the impact that is happening. I don't have numbers. I didn't really come here prepared to speak. My wife made me. So I'm really just being really passionate about this. Please take a look at the budget, see what can be done. Just my ask of you as a citizen is to just try and do the right thing by everyone as you guys make this decision tonight. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Michelle Champlin.
Hi, Board. My name is Michelle Champlin. I'm actually a former graduate of Shoreham-Wading River. I went here, I graduated in 2008, and I found myself back here after I started a family. And what really drew us back was the schools, right? I had a great experience here. I was heavily involved in the music program. I was in All-State and all this stuff. We had excellent programs. And I'm so excited to bring my kids into this district. I have one kid who's in Miller Avenue right now in 1st grade, and I have another one who would be entering pre-K next year. And I'm also, I wrote out a whole list of items that I wanted to talk about, almost like a speech here, but I kind of want to talk from my heart today. I'm also a teacher, and I teach in a district that has UPK, and it's not something that's going away. It is something that all the school districts are adopting, and I feel like by putting it off, we're just going to have to revisit this conversation year and year again. even if my own son isn't involved in the UPK program next year, I would like to be an advocate because I do think that there's, like the gentleman before me had said, there's a lot of debt that's not being stated out loud, especially with my age group that's moving back into the district. I have a lot of neighbors that are former graduates of Shoreham, and the interest rates that we're paying on these houses, and it's really impacting our wallets. So I would like you to just keep all of us in mind when you make this decision. It doesn't have to be for me, but as a community at whole, like, we're going to be a better community because of this. It's only going to make, like, our graduation rates go up. For residents not having to pay for UPK, that money goes back into the local economy. Like, we are going to be a better community, a better district because of this. Something that I'm not sure is even possible, but I know when I was going to school here in the early 2000s and I went to Miller Avenue, we had modular classrooms, which I know is not everyone's like first, priority, but if it was something, it's like a good solution to think about, possibly for like the next year and the next few years, because we do know that construction is very expensive, right? And we don't have the space in our buildings right now. So I know that those are pretty cost effective and they're pretty easy and quick to get. So that might be a solution for all of us. It's something to think about, so thank you for having me.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, now we have Lisa Marie Rosario, please.
So I'm Lisa Marie Rosario, Shoreham. My husband just spoke. And I just wanted to touch on a few things that naturally, as a mother, my husband missed a few things. So my motherly instincts came through. But so when we moved here, my daughter she was 3. So when she went into preschool age, we went to Trinity and Rocky Point. And my little ones still go there now. I absolutely love it there. I have no issues with them. The only issue is, it's not even about the money. So when my daughter enrolled into Miller Avenue into kindergarten, so she was only going 3 days a week when she was 4 years old, like for UPK age, right, pre-K. She was only going 3 days because that's all we could afford. I can't afford to pay for her to go full-time. And plus, the hours there are only like 3 hours she was going. So compared to UPK, which I know would be going off of like the New York State curriculum guidelines, she learned there. I'm not saying that, she didn't learn, but when she went into the kindergarten screening, she had to get extra help for reading, for math. She wasn't prepared. She's in 3rd grade now, and she is doing amazing. I'm sorry I'm getting emotional, but she's doing amazing now, thanks to this amazing school district. And I just want the same for my little ones, because if they can go into the UPK program here, they would do really well. And one of my friends, her daughter, went into the UPK, I'm sorry. One of my friend's daughters went into the UPK one of the years that they had it here, and she was reading before she even entered into kindergarten. And I'm like, that's amazing, and that's what my daughter didn't have, and I really want at least my daughter, my son, to have that opportunity too. So I hope that you guys really consider it, and anything we can make it work. And I did have one question too. I know you mentioned about the budget sorry, I lost my train of thought. I wanted to come back to me, I'm sorry. You mentioned something about the budget, the money, like per student. I just want to understand how it goes from, somebody else mentioned this too, how it went from 5,400 all the way to 11,000. And if there's, and like, this is what I was going to say, you mentioned inflation. They haven't updated that. How do we go about them updating that? Because, we're in 2025 now, and you guys know what's going on. So, if there's somebody else that maybe as a community, we could reach out to them to consider looking into that,
Absolutely.
So that's the only thing I really want to touch on.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's it. That's
Okay, great.
everyone that signed up.
So first, I just want to say thank you all for coming up to the podium. I know sometimes how intimidating that can be, first off, especially for some of the first-timers. and I know this is very much top-of-mind issue for us. I think I'm going to start with Mr. Singer, where he started was, so it is clear we don't have the space, Mr. Singer, right? We asked Mr. Poole, and the reason we did the Q&A is we wanted to really double down and make sure that we're sure of ourselves, that we don't have the space. I appreciate you saying you're not asking for construction, you're not asking to increase class sizes. None of us are. We obviously want our district to have the same strong outcomes that some of the residents have mentioned tonight. I think the ask was, I think your question was really around, so we don't have 2 classrooms. The answer is yes, we don't have 2 classrooms. So the only alternative potentially that exists is outside of district, which is back to some of the RFP respondents, which, not to put you on the spot, Mr. Poole, who were the 3, or do you know we know it's St. Anselm's, right? You don't know what
I know there's
okay.
3, they're local, they would be within 30 minutes. Definitely one with St. Anselm's, but I'll have to come back with the other
Okay.
two vendors.
So one of the things I'm going to leave with tonight is to look back at who the respondents were to the original fall RFP, and then I will ask Mr. Poole to go back out and see what space is still available in those programs, just to get an idea if they've filled those seats for next year or not, just to have an update for the next board meeting for that, to that ask, because we
Well,
definitely.
if we go out to RFP, if we are able just to update that, get that out, post it, generally, it's gonna be, generally we go out for a minimum of 2 weeks. It's a fairly lengthy packet. I like to think the vendors that responded have already a quality response. They're just gonna update their numbers if there is an update to the numbers. So it may not be available for the next board meeting is kind of what I'm
Okay,
getting at.
that's what I was just gonna ask
If we
you,
go back out
okay.
for RFP, there's a time process. I think the earliest I could get back out would be Friday, and then 2 weeks from that would be 2 weeks from Friday, and then,
So about a month out,
it would be, the meeting after the next meeting. That
meeting
to
after the
have-
next meeting, so not March 11th, it'd be
March
March 24th
25th.
or 25th?
25th?
It's
So
25th,
March
okay.
25th, I could potentially have updated seats in the local area.
I just want to ask the rest of the board, what are your thoughts about having Mr. Poole and administration take the time to go back out? And I just want some input, please, on that for external seats. What are your thoughts? And then I do want to do the revenue walk in a minute. Yeah.
Before you talk about that, there just seems to still be this misconception that the board is hiding information, providing misinformation, or did not have the right wording on our past budgets, and that's tremendously inaccurate. So I just want to make sure, before we talk about, because there's a difference, right? We host it, we pay a small amount. We have to go,
Outsource it?
we go
Yeah.
outsource, the cost
Rises.
rises. Outsourcing requires us to provide dollars within our general fund.
Correct.
Not outsourcing still requires us to put dollars within our general fund, but just less. So I just want to,
You're right.
I don't want to answer that question before we
Okay,
clarify
That's fine.
the accusations that were put out.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair point, that presentations, while they're sort of written as standalone, if somebody really wants the full presentation, go back and watch the video from the date on that PowerPoint, and that would add clarity to what was said about the grants. Maybe it's not clear on a slide that the grant that expired was that, but pretty sure I would have said that publicly at the time that we were discussing it last year or the year
I
before.
think we've been very clear. All right, so let's hold that thought. I'm going to move to the next resident who asked about the middle school building. I don't think you had the chance to even think about the middle school. I'm
Yeah,
not
it
sure
wasn't
that that's-
the middle school there's the 6th grade wing. Generally, the 7th graders and 8th graders are together, so, you'd look to find 4 classrooms together. Not that I can't go back and take a look and see. It definitely require further study. Where are the 4 classrooms going to be? Which 4 classrooms will be together? You probably have a sense of the
Same situation.
middle school.
Yeah, from
Are they gonna be the rooms at the end of the, at the end of the pods, the 4 classrooms? There's still gonna be some bathroom remediation. It's not necessarily set up, so then the thought too is where's the drop-off for that? So I think the middle schools is gonna, would, just off the top of my head, be a lot more problematic than the high school. But I certainly don't mind the next 2 weeks spending some time with Mr. Van at the middle school and walking the grounds and coming up with what it may not be a palatable option, but what is a potential option for the the middle school for
I do foresee-
4 adjacent classrooms.
I do foresee you're gonna have the same challenges that you mentioned here at the high school, Jerry. The space is not built to have an in and out whereby you're not mixing the high school students or middle school students with the UPK program right in the middle.
No,
There's not a-
I can't think of a scenario at the middle school they'd sort of be in their own area. Like at Wading River was kind of, those 2 rooms were sort of,
Yeah, they're
they had their
tucked
own
away.
entrance,
Yep.
the 2 bathrooms were modified, so a little more problematic to sort of create a UPK enclave at either one of those buildings. But I'm certainly happy to walk through the middle school with the principal and see what,
What's available?
Yeah, I mean, the last time we walked through, every classroom was being utilized, whether it was for
every
serv-
room, yeah,
every
it's a program
single
change no
room,
matter what.
yeah.
Every room is being utilized, it would be a change in program, but what would the change in program look like if we were gonna put 4 rooms together?
And they're being creative about the space in every single building, but.
Yes.
But we are, for years, have been using an auxiliary gym for the purpose of music programming, and finally have saved up to be able to outfit that so that it provides, that it can facilitate what it's currently being used for.
Good space.
I think the
Next was-
9-period day resulted in a little more space needs as well. A
Right,
couple
yeah,
years
the
ago,
nine,
middle school
yeah, 2
went
years
to a
ago.
9-period day, required a little more.
So, the next resident, talked a little bit about disadvantaged students in the lottery, the disadvantage, how many students are in the program? Jerry, I took some notes around,
I'm just gonna say, we
Yeah.
generally have 5% of an economically disadvantaged population, so if I'm gonna take a guess, 5% of economically disadvantaged, 5% of the 90 students enrolled in the lottery that last year, so maybe 4 students that were economically disadvantaged enrolled in the lottery. So it's a rough calculation, but it probably wouldn't be probably right around 4 out of the 90 that were in the lottery.
got it.
I just wanted to clarify on that issue, especially since the resident, and thank you for coming, is here for the first time. We, a lot of the advocacy efforts at the legislative level for our legislative committee revolved around, can we utilize as a district that funding to specifically target the economically disadvantaged? And there's a state formula. It's not like our opinion of who needs it most. It's specific figure. And so can we target that so that at least we can guarantee, the seats are allocated first? And the answer was no so far, but we continue to advocate for that, continue to advocate for an expansion of the funding, but then also for anyone who would apply to be given the seat first.
Yeah, that's been a regular part of the legislative committee. So the legislative committee is open to the constituents in the community, and we try to identify legislative priorities that we can then go to our, representatives and say, hey, these are things that would benefit us. And we go as far as providing them with examples of things they could do, changes in the law, in the way the law is written, that would really facilitate things for our community to make it better. And UPK has been on the agenda over the last couple of years, so this is not necessarily a new topic for us. We see the benefit of UPK, and everything that everyone's spoken about today, we absolutely understand, the benefit of early education at that point. And so those are exactly the things. But as board members, we appeal to the representatives, but also you folks
You all,
can
right.
also reach out to them directly, write letters, start that campaign. This is something that we've been trying to get passed so that we can make better use of those funds. So I appreciate everyone coming out here, but I did want to share that part with you all, that, it doesn't end here, right? There's still the ability to go forward. I've been on the legislative committee, and I've always felt for the last couple of years, this is something that we need to change the way the law is written. And we're going to continue to do that, but having you folks involved with it also helps immensely, because you're voting for them. So ultimately, that's where you want to end up.
So,
How many districts within our county even would outsource the UPK program versus having it in-house?
I don't know.
Mount Sinai's in-house. Okay, they're one of the only few, so
So let me just touch on this. So we mentioned that Assemblyperson Giglio and our State Senator Anthony Palumbo, March 6th, Jerry, it is, right? What time's the meeting at?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
It's for
I'd encourage all of you, I know that it's one of a few things that we have, but the 5,400 is a problem. Whether we can get that allocated, the allocated 513,000, did I get the number right? Glenn? 513, what is it?
The 513,000
Yeah,
for
right.
95 seats, but the truth be told, the 65 or 67 outsourced seats that were available a few months back would all fit neatly under the $513,000 with no additional cost, should the cap be lifted.
That's what I'm saying. So that's, I guess
And-
I guess what I'm saying, it's a multi-pronged approach. If we're, as a community, trying to solve this, we could use your help. I know that it sounds kind of disingenuous sometimes, but it would be great if some of you would show up with us to also put a voice to this, so they could see the people who are affected by the policies or the procedures that are out there. I think you've said it best, we're only one of the districts affected by the 5,400. If we could get that cap either raised or the release of the funds, so we can choose students, because like you just said, Mr. Poole, then I think it would be open to every student we've got.
You don't have to join a committee, I think you just come.
Yeah, no, just
March-
come for that one
March
night, March
6th,
6th.
just come.
It's a date, we'd love your support. I'd love you to be there, the legislative group that's here, Henry and I sit on this. Mr. Dean got to see it live with the Longwood Legislative Breakfast.
Mrs. Bettenhauser's here.
Miss Bettenhauser's back there, Miss Morano. So many of our committee members are here. We'd love your support. I know we kind of jumped around, but that kind of comes back to the next question, which the same resident asked, was about how do we get to 11,000 versus the 5,400 versus 150,000? A lot of numbers.
One of the questions says that what should we be advocating for, right?
Yep.
So we should be advocating for remove the per pupil cap of 5,400 and increase the grant funding to $11,000 per student. And maybe that's a little bit of a rough number, but I will say this. Last year, UPK responses varied from $8,000 to well over $11,000. Recent New York State competitive UPK grants would give priority to high-need school districts. The value for those grants is $10,000 per year per students, and those grants were a few years back. So knowing that there's cost inflation, knowing what the prices came in at last year, that wide range, somebody mentioned $1,600 a month. So somebody responding at $16,000 for the year, it shouldn't be odd to strange, because that could be a number that it costs the provider to do. So $11,000 gets us, and $11,000 is, would be a figure that would last for a number of years to provide some consistency. So that would also,
So the walk on that would be at the 513,000, we're allocated for 95 students? Is that
yes,
what? So
95 times
students.
5,400.
That's 5,400. So if, in effect, we ended up having the cap either removed or the funding amount relooked at, we'd be able to provide to our students that amount. So today,
Yes, the average, somebody asked for the RFPs that came back in the fall. They were $2,300, $2,400 over the $5,400. So, if you take $2,400 and multiply it by 65, you get to around $150,000.
That's what I was going to ask you to do.
That's where the number comes. So
Okay.
3 months ago when they came in, which they probably came in December, Mr. Meitzer, or somewhere as we're working, beginning the budget process, they came in, the 65 seats or so at $150,000 over, at a average $2,300, $2,400.
You have a
over.
follow-up question? I'll let you come to the
Over.
mic and ask your question. I'd rather you do that than just shout from the seat, sorry. I'm answering your question, so that's why I'm allowing you to do this.
So I understand why, ask for more, but what I'm trying to kind of get to is that 95 students
Yep.
is what's the estimate for the 513,000,
That's right.
correct?
That's right.
So the deficit is still that 150 if
Correct.
we're outsourcing it, correct?
That wouldn't be for 95 students.
It's
So
for-
the deficit of 150,000 would be for about 65 students. So the deficit between what the grant provides and what providers have told us about 3 months ago is about $2,400 per student. Varies a little bit.
So that 65 is inclusive of all
The
of the
three vendors
availability.
responded. A couple of vendors, I know one vendor responded with 36 seats in one location. The other vendors had smaller numbers, and maybe not even a full class of 18. So they responded with, it wouldn't necessarily be all Shoreham-Wading River kids in a section of 18, maybe they had 12 seats available. So there's some of that in the responses as well. But that would just be for a lottery for 65 seats or so for $150,000 or so.
Okay, then I'm confused by the 150,000 still. So if
Sure.
if the outsourcing model only has 65 seats,
Yes, that's what was.
That's,
but the
That was available 2
allocation
months
is
ago. That changed.
513,000. That,
Yes.
so then what
So
is
they
the?
cap the reimbursement. They will
So that's what I'm
only-
trying to look for,
The
though.
the
I'm
New
trying
York
to get
State
to
is,
that number.
if we have a child in UPK for the entire year, the state will give you $5,400 back. Even if that one seat cost you $10,000, you're only getting $5,400 back. If you have 2 kids for the entire year, you're gonna get $10,800 back. So it's, the reimbursement is capped at $5,400, no matter what the cost is. So if you don't have 95, if we don't have 95 students in UPK, we're not getting 95 times 5,400. You're only going to get 5,400 times the number of students that had UPK for 180 days
So
for
you'd
5
get
hours a day.
5,400 times the 65,
That's what you
That's
would
right.
get, yes.
That's
You-
correct. That's
So the
right now.
district would get 65
so you get
times 5,400.
351,000 in comparison to
And you'd
513.
you
Correct.
have to budget 65 times, I'll say $2,400 or so.
Okay. I have to think.
it's okay, we do all the time.
You are,
sit here
you are
trying to-
more than welcome, if you
Yep.
have other questions or those kind of things, to
Yep.
give me a call, and I'm happy to speak with you. If you're like, I wanted to ask that, you could give me a call. I'm more than
Okay,
happy
and
to
I'm
answer.
going to be back next week, or whatever it is.
2 weeks, every 2 weeks. Feel free. That's great, thank you. All right, so then, we talked about, look, I think that we all recognize it's nice to have our new residents moving in, and obviously young families. I think that's tremendous. I was fortunate enough to have my 2 children raised and grow up here, so I know the impact that the Shoreham-Wading River School District has had on their lives at where they are. They're both in college these days, so I can only imagine what it is for a young family. So I don't think anyone on this board doesn't recognize the importance of economics and how it affects your families. We think about it all the time when we do our budget workshops, and we sit down with administration and think about where the school district priorities are. So I just want you to know that we do recognize the impact of the cost. So just putting it out there. The next resident asked about modular classrooms, Mr. Poole. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You know, we have explored modular classrooms. The number of things that input on the RFP, which was
Yep.
exploring a consortium-based model with local districts for Briarcliff, which was working with a local vendor that would maybe lease the buildings and then allow us to lease under their, so we wouldn't have that large overhead, but that the cost for anybody involved in that exceeded their ability to pay beyond the grant and what they already had in their budget. So
Understood.
that kind of fell flat.
So you
But
can- we can
we have looked
collaborate.
at,
Yep.
we have looked at portables. So there's a couple of, portables aren't as cheap as you might think. I think a double portable is going to be $250. And then you have to put the drainage in. You have to have the plumbing and the drainage in there, and you have to have the ramp. So I'm just gonna be really a very conservative number for 4 classroom portables installed is probably at a minimum, being very conservative, $500,000. And Mr. Arcuri, you would agree somewhere in the area of 500 to 750 each. He's saying, I'm being conservative, saying
and that's
two.
why we-
He's
we-
saying each, so.
that's why we
so I
opened
tried to be
Briarcliff
conservative, saying maybe
when we
maybe
did,
250
yeah. And
each,
spent $1
but
million,
it's a
which was
big-
cheaper than the portables,
A big,
you know?
a big price tag for,
Yeah.
you know.
That
for
was
those,
during COVID, and, yeah.
I asked Mr. Arcuri, can we move the ones at Briarcliff? They are not movable.
Yeah, no.
Oh,
The
right.
portables at Briarcliff, yeah, can we move those
wouldn't want you
maybe?
to do that, no.
Cannot move the ones at Briarcliff, no, they are not,
I think those are the primary, I think we did the revenue walk of the 5,400 to 11,000, 150. Could you take anything else specifically, Jerry? I tried to write notes while the residents were talking. Did anyone else capture anything else that
Middle school,
came up that we should speak about?
I don't know, does anybody feel like their question wasn't answered that they might have?
No, but I would just echo what Mr. Poole just said, just to, send an email, contact his office. I feel like that was,
Okay. I mean, if we sound passionate about it, it's because we are. We've been banging our heads against the wall with this for years.
Years, yeah.
Years. So we're excited to
because
have,
we understand the value of it.
we do understand the value. The
Yep.
insinuation that we don't is is pretty frustrating. So, we also have spent years advocating. I think a lot of people have written emails recently, Henry, which is awesome. But, you know, you got to keep going for years to do
You have
that,
to, I
too.
mean, you know, coming
know?
from the private sector,
Yeah.
you know, when I first got on the board, I was frustrated with how long things take, all right? Because I'm just, in the private sector, things move quicker. And Mr. LaSquadro's laughing because he knows exactly what I'm saying. And education law is complicated, and the budgets associated with these things are extremely complicated. And I've gotten a good glimpse of what it takes to get something done over the years, and it takes years, which is why I keep saying back to all of you, if you can advocate, help us get back to our representatives, explain to them, because it's not just a problem now, it's a problem that's gonna be next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. So if we can get, and I'm gonna leave you with another term, local control, right? As a board, having local control of how we spend that money is very important. Here's a perfect example, right? Sure, we have these grants they give us, but it's tied to certain strings, right? And those strings then limit our ability to provide the services that we want to provide. So if we can have you guys help us get to the representatives and say, we've got these caps. The cap doesn't help us. Alleviate the cap. Let us spend the money the way we can. You know, we'll do the reporting. I mean, Mr. Poole said it in the beginning. We'll do the reporting necessary to make sure that the funds are used appropriately. But capping it, just, it's, I hate to say it, to a certain extent, it's a little political shell game because, oh, here's this funding out there, but you're limited on how you can use it. So I'll leave you with that. That's just my personal thought.
Yeah, I think many of us up here got involved with our school district in this capacity because we wanted to see the outcomes that you're seeing today. I know this is not a great representation, not having a UPK program. I don't think any of us up here feel proud about that. We would love to see how this can happen. When we go through the budget review tonight, the first review, we all know this as families in the community. There are rising costs. You'll see what happened to transportation this year. Luckily, if we did not have our reserves this year, we would all face a different impact. And Mr. Arcuri will go through that in much more detail in a moment and does a much better job than I will. But, you know, I want you to know that we sit here and we think about these things and try to think about how else to be creative with our finances. This year, we faced a number of challenges, starting with regionalization in the fall. I think we all know where that began this year.
Yeah, and just, I get to double down. That's losing local control, that
Right.
regionalization piece, right?
So therefore, we wouldn't have control of our budget, our outcomes. Then we were faced with, I think I mentioned this in a previous meeting, the Rockefeller Institute came out with a new foundation aid study, and Mr. Dean, not to put you on the spot, you got to see the presenter there talk about what cuts could potentially happen to a school district like ours, live and in person, which could, you know, again, I'm not trying to position it that way, Jerry, but you get the idea, that there's impacts there that are unknown still to our program, which could come as a result of the way the governor does her budget and the way that they distribute those funds to school districts.
We won't have final state aid numbers until the budget is passed, approved by the legislative body in New York State, and that's supposed to be April 1st, but who knows, that could be a little bit later.
Yeah.
So the state aid numbers are not concrete until after the budget's adopted in New York State.
And we don't say these things to you so you feel threatened. We say these things to you so you understand that it's complex. And we do. We advocate on behalf of your families, we advocate for your children, and it's not just for one specific group. We try and advocate for everyone, whether it's for athletics, whether it's for music, whether it's for special education. We try and balance it all, and I do applaud the administration. They do a fine job. They really do look for, I call it look-fors. Jerry, Mr. Poole, is always looking for ways to do things. That's the, fortunately, that's the spirit that the school district's had, and that's what I've been proud to be a part of. This is my 6th year on the board, and I've witnessed it firsthand, and I hope that you as new families get to experience that over the years that you're here and see how the school district works with your children through our teachers and our staff and our administrators. We're a very fortunate school district. That's how I'll leave it for you right now. And we will take the comments and the questions tonight, and we'll take them back. I don't think we're going to rest and leave it as a, you know, as a topic yet. I don't think we're done with it, but we'll definitely come back to you, and Mr. Poole and the board will have some further conversations. That's kind of where I'll leave it right now. And anyone else have any specific
Thank you, Tom.
I just want to echo, like, just the one, there is, it might be missed, just, you mentioned how creative and diligent Mr. Poole is with this stuff, that the consortium option, banding together with all of our local school districts to utilize Briar Cliff, come together, such a creative solution that Mr. Poole thought of, hours and hours and hours of investigation, what would be required to go into that, discussions with the local leaders, school leaders, with the hunch that it wouldn't work out, but the glimmer of hope that it could possibly, and not leave any stone left unturned, just hinging upon that possibility. So I just want to, I mean, if you don't know what you don't know, so, all questions are always welcome. Participation in our discussions and committees, always welcome. But I just wanted to highlight that one specific thing, that the consortium option model that was mentioned, and then it became cost prohibitive, even though it sounded wonderful and other district leaders were excited about it, became cost prohibitive for other districts to have to pay what we would have to pay in order to take advantage of that, because they could do it cheaper with the amount of funding that they get. So I just wanted to highlight that hours and hours, research and research, just on the possibility of something creative being arrived at.
Yeah, I think ultimately when you think about the solution, that even if it was a half-baked solution right now, the outside vendors don't supply enough seats for the entire student body. That's the other issue we have, which is a lottery-based system, which is not a perfect one whatsoever, but that's something that we'll have to continue to discuss. It doesn't serve all the needs of every student. That's another issue. So are you capturing the whole student body, or are you capturing a portion? That's another whole issue to continue to.
Yeah, so many.
So not having enough seats even externally is another problem. Okay, I think, Mr. Poole, I want to thank you for putting the Q&A together. I think it was very helpful.
I hope it was helpful
I
for
appreciate the
people.
residents, again, coming up and speaking on behalf of concerns and questions. Hope we did our best to answer those. I'm going to continue. Ms. Kirschis, anything else from residents?
No, we have everybody that signed up spoke,
Okay.
so.
Thank you very much.
And Tom, I know you touched on the social media piece
Yes.
of, again, we want to hear these things from you. Social media sometimes doesn't help. I tried to join the mom's page years ago just so I could hear, and I wasn't allowed on it. So this is a good forum here, because we're able to have dialogue, and you guys can talk back and forth about, what are your ideas? Again, I'm not advocating that you need to join a committee, but you can come to committee meetings, and we have audit committee, audit's open to public, isn't it? No, it's not. But we do have legislative.
Audit is open.
Oh, it is
Public.
open,
You're right.
okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's
yeah.
all these
They're all
committees that give you a better view of what the school district's doing, and your input. I'm a mechanical engineer, and my input is only a certain facet of education and how I can play a role here. We each have different careers. Again, we're all volunteers. We all have different careers, and I think that the individuality of ours is really what's made this board a very strong board, and I want to thank you guys for all the work as well and time, but your input, I can't stress it enough, your input is very valuable to us, because it makes us be able to do a better job at what we're doing right now, so please.
The last word I'll have on this is, it's not an us and them or we and they. This is all of us. This is our community. So we do value your input. I will expressly tell you that again. We're not shying away from the conversation. This is a tough conversation to have. We're trying to find a solution or look for ways to make something like this occur. But again, so thank you again for your input tonight. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks again, Mr. Poole. All right, I'm going to continue with our board meeting. Next up, we've got our reports and reviews. So speaking of a program that's an amazing program, Ms. Von Eschen is going to present as our Director of Special Education and Pupil Services, our special education program. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. It's always my privilege and honor to present on our special education program and pupil personnel services. So thank you so much.
Of course, thank you, Ms. Von
Okay, so a little overview of what we'll go through tonight. Kind of broke it into 4 sections. We'll kind of go by the numbers, go with an overall special ed update, talk a little bit about MTSS and the work we've been doing. And I read special ed updates twice. Sorry, that is not correct. It's an SEL.
That means a very, very special update.
It's very special. It should be an SEL update. Sorry, I looked at this 100 times. Okay, so starting with the numbers, I just thought I'd bring to you what our numbers look like in terms of classification. So looking at CPSE, breaking it into students with IEPs versus students with 504 plans. We currently, I'm not going to read all them, I'll read them quick, but 44 CPSE students. This is actually as of October 2024. We always look at that October snapshot.
Those are 3 and 4-year-olds, right?
So our CPSE students are 3 and 4-year-olds, exactly, who are, receive special ed services through actually the county, but their CPSE meetings happen through the district. So we maintain those IEPs and then work closely with the county for those services.
Ms. Foundation, that's a really good call, considering we just talked about UPK. So the district still supervises CPSE meetings, right? SE meetings?
Yes.
On behalf of students that need services. Is that ultimately, okay.
Yes, so it's the 2 years typically before they enter. Early intervention happens before that, again, through the county. Then students transition to CPSE and then into CSE if they're still qualifying. But again, it's funded through the county, but we do all of the behind the scenes to get all the paperwork in place and get those services in place for students.
Understood.
And then kindergarten through 5th grade, we have 154 students and 51 students with 504 plans. 6th grade through 12th grade, actually, we've ungraded students that stay with us up until they're just about 22 years old, so that number incorporates really beyond 12th grade. 172 students and then 118 with 504 plans. And then our out-of-district students, these are included in those other numbers. But we have 10 students that attend districts outside of our 4 schools within the Shoreham-Wading River boundaries, so BOCES settings or DDI, private placements. The last row, tuition students attending our programs, these are actually 12 students that are residents of other local school districts, so whether it be Miller Place, Rocky Point, Mount Sinai, William Floyd, I'm just naming a few. There's 12 students that their districts do not have appropriate programs for them, and we have extra seats, like if it's an 811 and we only have, say, 5 Shoreham-Wading River students, we would allow 1 or 2 of those seats to go to a student if they're appropriate for our program. So from kindergarten up, like I said, almost up to our 22-year-olds, we have 12 students that were fortunate enough to join us from other local school districts. So those are not Shoreham-Wading River residents, but I wanted that number to be included. As you can see over the last 3 years, again, looking at October snapshots, our classification rate remains right around 17%. We had a lot of students, I didn't bring the exact number, but students move into the district with IEPs over the past summer. And then we have students move out, we have students that are declassified, and we sort of maintain, like you can see, right around that 17%.
So it's been pretty consistent for the last 3 years.
Pretty consistent, yes. So that's those numbers. Graduation rates, these are really phenomenal. So looking at students with disabilities, our 5-year graduation rate is 95%, top 5% in New York State. Very proud of that. The 4-year graduation rate is 89%. We have small numbers, so 3 of those students from that cohort, it's not really that they didn't graduate. They're going to be, they're in our RISE program. They're alternately assessed, and they're staying until they're 22, or the day before they're 22 is how the regulations read. So these students they weren't intended to graduate.
I was going to say, they skew your number because
They skew our numbers.
They want a 4-year program anyway.
Exactly, right. So the regulations allow them to stay, and it's in their best interest too. So even that 4-year graduation rate is still in the top 12% of New York State, which is wonderful. And then just to kind of break it down for you, 63% of those students are receiving Regents diplomas and another 15% with advanced Regents diplomas. And that number puts us into the top 18% of New York State of students with advanced Regents diplomas. So just some really exciting numbers to see the success rates of students going through our programs. I'm not going to read you this one, but I just broke it down by, and I think you've probably seen these before, but broken down by the Regents exams that students took in June of 2024 compared to the region. I mean, we do really, really well. A little a little bit lower in earth science and physics, but I'm happy to see our kids challenging themselves in some of these areas, so there's a couple of ways to look at this.
You also have 3 students. in
And it's a very
physics.
low, right? We have a low number going into it. But, kudos to those 3 for challenging themselves, right? That's awesome. So just, not to spend too much time on the numbers, but I'll keep that. And then these numbers represent our, some of our staffing within our, this kind of looks at our PPS as well as special education. So our mental health staff, we have 6 school psychologists amongst our 4 buildings, 2 social workers, and then our 5 school counselors or guidance counselors, 2 at the middle school and 3 at the high school. Our special class, that's really the regulation term for what we kind of locally call our RISE or our learning center classes. Right now, we have, looking at the elementary program, 7 classes total, so 3 RISE classes, 4 LC classes. 6th through 8th, we have 3 also. And then the high school's a little difficult to break down because it's by subject, so students might be in like something for science, and then by 12th grade, they might not be taking science anymore. So there's 2 sections of RISE, that's pretty straightforward, and then there's 1 class per subject per grade of Learning Center, if that makes sense. Little harder to break that one down. And then those, you can see the numbers, special ed teachers, K through 5, we have 17, 6 through 8, 10, and 9 through 12, we have 13 teachers. Additional supports that we offer, we have 8 wonderful, they're the best, our speech language teachers, I just can't say enough great things about them. Our OTPTs are wonderful too. They are through agencies, they don't work directly for us, but they're contracted through agencies. Our behavior consultants are contracted through agencies. Our transition coordinator is on staff with us. Mr. Buscemi teaches 3 periods a day and then spends the rest of his day as a transition coordinator and really does work beyond just the high school. So we're in our 2nd year of that program, and he's sick of seeing me this week. We work pretty closely together, and we're doing a lot of things that program and position keeps growing.
Ms. Foundation, so transition coordinator, they help students as they're moving out of our schools to, I guess?
Yes. So
Okay.
starting in 8th grade, we need to have on students IEPs, or 8th going into 9th grade, I should say, start planning for what life looks like for kiddos after high school, and if they're interested in a field of study, are we making sure that they're aware of what electives we have out there and making, so this transition coordinator is working with the special ed teacher and the guidance counselors to make sure that students are aware of like what skills they need and what outside agencies, they'll help us with Access VR, and he'll help us with Access VR and OPWDD. And then also that like compliance piece of the IEP to make sure that we're writing the IEPs in a way that supports students so they're ready for life after high school, whether it be a career or college bound. So that position just keeps growing. And then we have consultants that come in, again, agency or contracted positions that come in as educational consultants and assistive technology consultants, augmentative communication. That's our students that are nonverbal and use devices. So we have consultants that come in and make sure that we're providing services on the IEP to meet the students' needs. So that's kind of our overall staffing. So this is the fun part. So what's new, what's going on this year? We're completing our integrated co-teaching professional development and coaching for grades K through 8. We did 2 years at the high school. We're in the 2nd year at the middle school, and we're in our 1st year at the elementary schools, working on like what does co-teaching look like. I have some slides later to show some pictures of that. But you walk into classrooms now, and I hear it from my counterparts in humanities and STEM, the other directors and the principals and everyone saying that you walk in and there is station learning going on. There's parallel teaching where you'll walk in a room and kids are getting the same lesson but in small groups, right? So the biggest bang for your buck with an integrated co-teaching class is the staff to student ratio, right? So if one person's standing at the front of the room and the other person's just kind of like walking the hallways, you're not breaking down your ratio. So we've worked over 3 years now on like what that looks like and how do students get more teacher small group instruction in an ICT class. And we started at the high school second year in the middle school and rolled that into the elementary schools this year, and with a lot of success. Really proud of the work we've done with like specialized reading instruction and tying that into the science of reading. That's been Da Vinci. Lacretz is the agency that did the ICT coaching. Da Vinci is the agency doing our specialized reading instruction. And just making sure that we have programs in place that meet the needs of students who don't learn to read quite as naturally maybe as other learners. And when they're not learning, you know, when you're using a program, like the why behind what you're doing, and when it's not working, what do you do and how can you differentiate? So there's just so much to learn in that area, and the teachers just keep asking for more. And then finally, next year, some upcoming changes to our high school RISE peer mentor program. We decided that we want to move toward a like rotation model, and I'll list the classes a little bit later. But so that, because our kids do stay until they're almost 22, it's a long time in high school. So they might not need art all those 7 years, right? So maybe art will come out for
Change it
2
up.
years, and a technology class is going to come in. So that's something that we've been working on with the high
So it
school.
addresses the longer-term student in the high school.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there's a couple like, well, does theater always stay? Because I have a hard time giving up that theater
I
show.
do
I don't know
too.
about you, right? So theater might always stay. But no, you know, well, does music stay for maybe 3 years and then
does.
something else comes in? So it'll also give our general ed peers that maybe they're a technology student. They're like, oh, I always wanted to be a peer mentor, but I don't do theater, but I'll do tech. So it's good for both sides, you know, for
100%.
all kids. So we're
I
excited
think,
about
I
that.
think we've seen, all of us, I don't know how many of the board members, students, you know, children, but the peer mentoring program has just been phenomenal. I
It's-
think
it's
you
such
hear
a-
that probably, but, yeah.
Oh, no, it's such a point of pride.
Yeah, it is. It's a point of pride. It is definitely something that has taken shape and continues to grow. So I'm glad to see that you're evolving it.
Yes.
And that theater program is like also a speech services program. Like
Yes.
it's so much more than a
Yes.
theater program.
It's also an
incredible.
empathy program.
An empathy
Right.
program.
It's all things.
It really is.
It's all things.
It's all
yeah.
things.
It's probably the most amazing course that's offered.
It really is. It's one of those things when I got here, I was like, why didn't I think of this? Like, it's so brilliant. Like, I was like so happy to have it here. So this is something kind of like off. I don't usually talk about the special ed office often, or, you know, but this is something that was kind of neat that we did, and just kind of moving along and making our office a little more environmentally and you know, a little green. We moved over from really mailing all IEPs, documents, invitations to an online portal. So parents can opt out of this portal. We had about 25 parents opt out. You saw how many special education students, and that was fine. They can still receive paper, and people can still decide to opt out, but it's going pretty well. So 504s and special education documents are all being sent electronically now. It's far more secure. That's another piece of it. It's far quicker. So we're having now, if we have a CSE meeting and if we can get the paperwork done, say 3 or 4 days later, that paperwork is in that parent's hand that afternoon. Like, as soon as we're sending it out, it's instant, and then they're able to even sign consent and get it back to us instantaneously. So the turnaround time of students getting services, getting evaluations is, we knew it was going to be good. It's far exceeded what we could have imagined. And it's very convenient when a parent calls, oh, I misplaced whatever. We're like, are you by your computer? Hold on. We click a button, and they have it securely. So this has been something we've been talked about for a long time.
Is that something you keep electronically even for the parents that opt out, so that if they do say like?
Yes. Oh,
we wanna
it's
opt
like,
in-
it's ready to go.
Yeah.
It's just, we just have like a list that we say like, don't, you know,
Got it.
remember to send this IEP in the mail. Exactly, but people could opt into it, like, I just say, oh, just send me an email and I'll send it over to you. So it's gone really well. We started in December, and this is obviously our first annual review that we're moving toward this. So I just thought I'd highlight something fun in the office.
Can I ask a quick question? This is more not special ed specific, but that portal for Frontline, I'm just curious to know for future, is it possible to manage our attendance mailings through that portal? Just throwing that out there, but thank you.
Right, so it's with, like, Frontline, you know, has many.
Yeah.
And so then it's within the IEP Direct end of Frontline,
Awesome.
so that's a
Yeah,
good
so I'm just
question.
wondering if Frontline offers that. Anyway,
That's a good
thank you.
question. So jumping over, the rest of my presentation is a whole lot of pictures and just really, you know, highlighting all the work that's done at the, you know, the building level. But, you know, we have Play Pals at Miller Avenue and Wading River, and it's, you know, our chance for inclusive play and all those, collaboration skills and time for friendship really after school. So we're proud of that program. At second grade, we have 2 classes. One has they're next door to each other, students with special needs as well as students that are just typical students in second grade. They partner together, and this is just a picture, and these 2 teachers just took it upon themselves to do this, and it's just really a beautiful collaboration. So I asked them to share a picture, and I was excited to share that. Another, there's a K1 class sharing with another class, so they're joined together for science. So you can see, it's just, it gives an opportunity for kids to be together in different settings. Station teaching is what we were talking about earlier. So this is our second grade class, an ICT class. Just on the side, I listed what we've been doing in terms of our training, our ICT training with the staff, that K through 12 training that we're in year 3 of. And this is an example of station learning. So the gen ed teachers at one station, the special education teachers at another station, and the teaching assistant is at like an independent station supporting those students. And students would move through. So they're, instead of learning in a group of, say, 21, they're learning in a group of 7 with one teacher. So you can see that benefit of that small group instruction. This is happening all the time in all of our buildings.
Ms. Von Eschen, although this is two teachers together and the model requires that, there's a lot of bits of it that are just great instruction. So is there any turnkeying that's happening when you look at the instructional practice from what the teachers, this pair is learning to just apply to gen ed?
So certainly, I would say at the middle school and high school, there was like an unintended, major movement of these station models, because a lot of so if I'm a general ed teacher and I teach 2 classes with my special ed counterpart, I teach the other 3 by myself, and so now they're like, well, this kind of works. So they were just kind of continuing on, even if they're the only person in the classroom, they're having 2 independent stations and maybe 1. So we're seeing that, like at the elementary level, we're only halfway through our first year of the professional development, but in our second year at the middle school and high school, we were seeing general ed teachers, like every time I go in, they're like, I do this in my other classes too.
I know there's not another person, but I'm just wondering a shift from maybe like direct instruction to more differentiated instruction in the secondary model.
No, we certainly can look into that,
interesting.
yes. But I think just the training as a whole, any PD is good PD, so their general ed teachers are taking that into their general ed classes, some of what they learned. But we could do it more.
Yeah, it's an interesting
Great
thinking.
point. So with middle school best buddies, jumping into middle school, so you see here some Veteran Day activities, gingerbread making, just having fun together. I asked for pictures and people I had an outpouring of pictures, so I had to put them all in. High school best buddies, obviously that bottom one is Halloween, and that top one is just a really big group. That is amazing best buddies representation, and we're just so proud of that.
We're such a small school district.
For a small school district, it's absolutely amazing. So this is our high school, Rise Peer Mentoring class, which we talked about. So right now we phys ed, art, music, Spanish, theater. Spanish is relatively new, that'll stay. And right now, between all those classes, we have over 50 general education peer mentors that sign up to be part of this. So like you said, in a small school, that just, kind of makes your heart happy. And this was our summer theater play, and they're getting ready for their next one. And then the Unified Athletics Summit. So there's 3 things you really see here. So this is all our Unified Athletics. We have bowling, which we introduced, I think the year after or 2 years after we introduced basketball. The summit, so the students in that top picture had the opportunity to go to a Special Olympics Unified Athletics Summit and learn about leadership, inclusive practices, and it's really a student leadership group with students and athletes that are disabled as well as not disabled. So we were really excited to see our kids go to that this year. That was a first. So always expanding and growing.
Looking forward to basketball season.
Yes, me too. It's my
coming
favorite.
right up,
And so that's kind of the special ed end. This is our SEL, Wildcats of Character, Mental Health and Wellness, Social Emotional Learning, sort of all those things together. That was the Unity Day at the middle school. So what are we doing with social emotional learning? We've continued our twice annual SEL parent surveys. I always say to the psychologist, like, do you get at least like 1 or 2 new facts about students that you didn't know if we did, and they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, all right, then we'll keep doing it. And they probably get more than that. So we'll keep doing that. We have our Empowering Minds curriculum from kindergarten up through 8th grade. We did a whole, overhaul of our suicide prevention protocols 2 years ago, but we updated it again, right? Just to make sure we have like a subcommittee that meets about that. We're still considering the student strength screeners as part of the MTSS process. I have a little more about that a little bit later. Continued peer mentoring program at the high school that we talked about. We also have the mentoring, and I didn't put that on here, I realized after. We continue to have a relationship with North Shore Youth Council, and then we spoke a little bit already about Best Buddies and Play Pals, which kind of fall under that special ed and SEL pieces. So our Wildcats of Character, we still have our same focus of character traits we're talking about this summer, maybe putting a group together and just, like maybe some of these things can be, some traits will be pulled out and new ones put in place. We're going to put a group together to see if, just to keep it fresh. We don't ever want it to get stale. So, and this is just like walking around schools and you just find bulletin boards where teachers are, like without being prompted, they just celebrate that month and really get into it.
So may I ask a question on the Wildcats with Character? So let's say at the middle school, so who delivers the lessons? Because I know each month we have a different theme. Who's like responsible to bring that, facilitate that, get that out into the student population?
It's a push-in into the health class, and Miss Benz does it, and Miss Armstrong, the 2 psychologists. Miss Armstrong took on a couple of classes this year, and Miss Benz does the vast majority of it, is as a push-in into our health classes with Mr. Lee. And they have a great thing, and they just keep, developing it and making it better. So it's like only once or twice a month. And then you'll see some of the other SEL activities that's at the middle school. At the elementary school, we have 2 lessons a month. And intentionally, we made it, we just felt that if like one person is delivering all the lessons, the kid's going to say, hey, that's the person that cares about if I have integrity or not. So we wanted the principals to be involved, so they do some lessons, the psychologists, the classroom teachers, and the physical education teachers. And they're on a schedule. It's like so the kids know that, like, here's all the people in my school community that care about my social emotional learning. And these are all the people that are invested in me doing these things. So we thought that was a better approach I think we've done, this is maybe the 3rd year with that approach.
I think that's great. I just wanted to refresh my memory of how we do it, how we implement it. So I have the unique vantage point of passing on Randall Road. Mr. Van always has up there the specific character trait of the month, and I'm reminded.
I love
Perseverance, or
yes.
I just remind myself of the Wildcat with Character.
And it's so simple. Sometimes it just has the word, and it has such a big impact, right? Just
Yeah, it
that
does.
small
No, it
thing.
absolutely does. I think, yeah, absolutely.
Great. So this is I just wanted to highlight a little bit about like the counseling that's done at our schools. So this is at Miller Avenue, just like a little program that they use, and using like the social thinking methodology. So just to bring you something a little bit different that we don't talk about often. So there are actual, I wouldn't call it a curriculum per se, but a program that we use, and it's to develop those social competencies. So we talk a lot about those social connections, executive functioning, relationship development at a K-1-2 level, self-regulation, social thinking vocabulary. So I just thought this one was kind of neat to bring in. You can see it's super age appropriate. They talk about the unthinkabots and the thinkables, and it's just super cute. But what they're doing is starting at this low of a level and with very discrete, explicit instruction in these areas. So these are for students that are in our counseling groups, whether it's mandated or non-mandated, with Miss Everhart. But just to give you a little, taste of some of that. And then going into Wading River, these are some of our classes just doing activities on gratitude and collaboration, just really embracing, and what I loved about this one, if you see the picture on the right, like they pulled it into a STEM challenge. So it's on those cards. There were gratitude sentences written, but then they had to take those and build something with it collaboratively. So you see all those pieces coming together. And running a small business, right? So these little guys run some small businesses at Wading River, and
I love this. I should be there for that.
yeah, they're doing an amazing job. This is,
That's awesome.
it's really great. So that's just, what you see there.
Anyone run a successful business that we should know about? We
Right,
should invest.
they make dog bones, and they do all sorts of things. It's some cool stuff going on.
It is, it's tremendous.
And then Ms. Hennessy's class, practicing compassion and gratitude again. So you'll see, this was just me sending out, like, hey, send me pictures of what you do, and the overwhelming, they're so proud of the work that they're doing, as they should be. So jars full of love, pass the heart. So it's happening in all of our classrooms. Red Ribbon Week at the middle school, some of these posters were absolutely amazing. Some of what they did is they moved over for one grade level from like physical posters to using Canva. So again, like bringing in some of those other skills that we use in other classes. And then you can just see the collaboration in that bottom picture, and, happy, healthy, and drug-free is a great message, obviously. PS I Love You Day was just passed, and that's a national organization. And what I loved about this one, first of all, the hallway just in the middle school looked beautiful, but they worked with Starbucks in the local community. And so when people went in on PS I Love You Day, they were receiving their coffee with a message from our middle school students.
That's terrific, wow.
Oh.
It's pretty cool.
It was a thing.
Awesome, yeah.
So it's on Valentine's Day is usually when it's celebrated, obviously, I Love You Day.
Right, which this year just happened to fall on Valentine's
Got it.
Day, right, exactly.
That's
But
really
you'll
neat.
see people in the schools, it's all purple, and people wearing purple. And I know like the Rise class last year, the high school Rise class made sweatshirts for people that, just, so you just see the message everywhere. This year, yes, it fell on Valentine's Day. So that was just something to show you like that, our SEL lessons going into the community. It's really something special. This is again, at the middle school, they've really taken the Wildcats of Character and ran with it. And every month, they have an opportunity for staff to nominate students who showed that character trait, just give a little brief overview, and then the kids are celebrated once a month. So I love that.
Can I ask a question before you move on to this? So it might be, I think it's I don't know the answer to it, and I think it's hard to figure out, but in a climate and environment where so much social emotional support is necessary for students, is there any way that you can think of to demonstrate beyond presentations like this, like how can we communicate more effectively about it's working? And I do a lot of social emotional measurement, and surveys don't really work. So I don't know if there's anything that you've been thinking about of like, we did this peer mentoring program, and it was successful because X, Y, and Z.
The metrics of what we're doing, right.
I
And the social-
hesitate to say metrics because it's
Right.
like such a not metric-y thing. But
Exactly.
there is a way to like talk about the benefits so that in a world where someone's like, why are we doing this? You can say, well, because X, Y, and Z. And I don't know what the answer is,
Right.
but just
Students
curious.
qualifying it is a great way to do
Yeah.
it. Anecdotes, when you think of, it's not the same idea, but the idea of natural helpers, I think that the reason why that's so impactful is that they do have opportunities to share. I don't think that would be appropriate in a school setting, but it's really because they're sharing their stories and
Yeah.
they're building empathy.
Right.
I don't know if
And
there's
in that, that picture of the best buddies earlier, like the number of students, or if you've seen the picture, I think it was like 2 years ago of when they had all of the students together for the unified basketball. There's something so like we can, as adults, try to like push kids to be part of that, but if it's not organic in nature, learned at a very early age. So we know it's happening, but like you said, how do we really show it's happening?
The benefit is so
Right.
great that it's maybe impossible to capture.
Right.
Like kids building empathy and
They'll
being
tell their
good
story,
humans.
though. They would tell their story.
Yeah.
They would.
We'll
Yeah.
definitely give that some thought. I actually love that.
Well,
So, yes.
well, I think one of the measurements is simply the fact that how many students want to be a part of those programs, general ed with special ed and vice versa, just be a part of that. So it's
It is so
obvious-
special, it really
Sorry,
is.
Yeah, it is, no, absolutely. But I
Especially
agree
the
with you. I
big
wish there
kids,
was a-
especially the big kids.
Sorry, Katie. what was
No, you, go ahead.
No, I wish there was a way to, simply measure that. I just know anecdotally, the success we see is the pictures, the outcomes, the kids together,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
would say,
know how to-
and I'm sure the principals, I think, would agree anecdotally, it's sort of an absence of negative data as well, a decline in negative data, and probably just thinking as the community listening, even the social media workshops we've held 2 years in a row, and which everybody should make sure their kids are in school for, because those are highly valuable for them.
That's right.
But those social media, healthy digital footprints about what not to do online creates a reduction in negative behavior, along with this work here about how do we create positive behaviors. So just I know anecdotally for myself, my sense is a general decline over time of negative data.
And I'd say it is, we see it
Connection.
in outcomes, sorry, Megan?
I think there's a sense of, a lot of these programs just bring a tremendous sense of deep connection. And I think that whether you're going to the integrated theater play, or, like you're in the audience and just feeling what's happening, palpable. So for me, you can see it, I see it on my son's face, and the way he talks about it. I know, again, it's hard to measure, but,
Maybe you don't need to, I was just.
yeah.
No, I appreciate what you're asking, but yeah, no, the outcome is,
No, it's a good idea.
no.
We'll
I
definitely
think
give
the
that to-
little ones always want to be a part of stuff like this, the little ones. But I think, for me, the greatest measure is how many kids continue to remain engaged, and then when we see the high school picture, like you
100%.
mentioned, it's not a program that you can inject at one particular point in their life. It's this continuity that we offer, I think.
Or if you see a junior that, is so sports-driven, and then will create a schedule where he skips his lunch to be part of integrated theater for the third year in a row. Like, that, to me, is measurable,
It's amazing, yeah.
I'm just reminded of the winter high school concert where, I won't name the student, but a great student, in the theater program, in athletics, all those things, and we're talking about graduation, about leaving the high school, and he was just on stage in the peer mentoring music and band, and I just watched him cajole a couple of kids to start singing and smile and try to have some fun on stage, and they did. And just talking to him, he said, out of everything, and I didn't even ask, I'm going to miss that the most.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's
Yeah,
kind
it's
of.
true.
That's amazing.
And this was just a well-rounded, high-achieving kid. I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss this the most. Because maybe he recognized it's hard to replicate,
100%.
Someplace else. But
Well, they take these experiences that they gain here, and hopefully they take them on to life, which is our ultimate, the
They're
true
going to be our
testament.
future educators.
Yes, 100%, Ms. Radish.
I think we
100%.
offer more measurables here, just by the way of, I think that it's common for districts to have a monthly celebration like this, but it's usually a bulletin board or a sign. But the way that you've worked and collaborated with all of the leaders throughout our community and the teachers and the students is that you've instituted a framework for this to be executed that makes it measurable, So the framework you placed, I think, is our greatest.
And you highlighted organic and integrated into their everyday kind of school life.
Yeah.
Not to step back, but the progression of this has been amazing. And seeing the
Yeah, thank
outcomes
you.
now, it's nice to see where you're at
Thank
with
you.
it.
Super proud of it. All right, so just wrapping up real quick, some of the MTSS work that we've been doing, it's not really special ed, but I've been lucky enough to be involved on many levels, so we're getting there. We're working on a district-wide team. There's 20 stakeholders from all 4 schools across the district, all areas, creating a revised K-12 MTSS handbook. What we love about the handbook idea is that it's super user-friendly, right? A handbook is going to get you right where you need to be. So 22 hours of handbook development over 6 sessions to create this first draft. The group is examining every aspect of the multi-tiered system support, all the things that are already successful, because there is a lot of that, and what's new out there, right? What don't we know yet? So we've been working on this, creating the handbook to optimize resource allocations, address diverse student needs, district-wide implementation, a shared vision of MTSS, and the plan will include academics, behavior, social emotional needs, and attendance. So this is all that kind of make sure nobody slips through the cracks, and we look at children as a whole child.
Did we bring in Branching Minds to facilitate that work?
Yes,
We
they
did.
are. They're
Okay.
facilitating the work with us. We got very lucky. We have an amazingly brilliant person, and 22 hours, she keeps us on track. And then this is just a student strength assessment that we've been considering, and I just bring it back up because there's different versions of it on different levels. And it's really an SEL strengths assessment to determine, it's like a universal screener. And we haven't made decisions yet about it, but I
Right.
just wanted to throw this in there so that if we
But
do
it
come
has
back
that,
to
it
it.
has the capability of outputting,
Yes.
okay, interesting.
There's different screeners for different levels, and we haven't made decisions about it yet, but it's in the process. It might not be a decision this year, maybe next year, but I just wanted to throw that in
Yeah,
there.
I see why, because you don't know what to do with it. Once you have a
Right.
result, what do you then do with it, right?
Exactly.
I got you.
So it kind of ties into the rest of the presentation, so I just wanted to include it there.
Yeah, of course.
And that's it. I thank you so much for having me
Yeah.
and my amazing, colleagues that make this all possible in the community, our amazing SEPTA, the families, and of course, mostly the students. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Foundation. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. The moment that we've all been waiting for.
Not all of us.
This is
Now we've cleared the room.
intentional.
We've cleared the room. I gave you the exit. I gave everyone the exit opportunity. Glenn, I'm starting to think it's you.
We need to make sure we clap for him.
Yes, we do.
He needs a class.
Mr. Curie, Mr.
Thank
Dean
you all
said
for
he
coming
would stay,
tonight.
but he had to go. He was gonna
Thank you for
present
coming
later.
this evening. Yes.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Thank you. Good
Thank you
night.
for coming out.
Oh, good point, Glenn. So next up, under our reports and reviews, we have our budget presentation with Mr. Glenn Arcuri, our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. Mr. Arcuri,
Good evening.
good evening.
Cannot believe that we're here again.
Yes, we are.
It seems like it was yesterday that
Crazy,
we
right?
were presenting the 24-25 budget.
Crazy.
Now the 24-25 budget's over, February's almost over, and we are beginning to talk about 2025-26 budget. Thanks for the opportunity.
You okay, Glenn?
I am. So the 25-26 budget is putting it together isn't a single person project. It is an entire district project. It requires involvement from the teachers, prepare their budgets, provide them to the building principals. From the building principals, they then provide them to this central office team, whether it's the special education director, director of athletics, technology, facilities. Everybody plays a large part inside of the budget process. So there isn't a single one person that takes credit for this budget. Yes, Cabinet puts it all together, deciphers it, but in actuality, the budget is an entire district process, and I could never do what I do without their direct involvement. It would definitely not be possible. So starting with, there you go. Our story, we always try to start the budget presentation with pictures that capture a lot of our fantastic moments. We could do the entire presentation the way Ms. Von Eschen did. Every single picture involving students shows their actual involvement that our budget provides them the opportunities for. World-class opportunities, everything listed on this particular slide, as well as the following one, are all parts of our K-12 program that go above and beyond the state mandate. Nothing on world-class opportunities, whether it's a state-of-the-art high school art suite, whether it's an academic success center, whether it's dual middle school sports teams, whether it's the Nexus Community Service Program, Science Research Program, outdoor learning environments, none of them are part of the state mandated required program. And that's an important point to capture, because as we continue to show the total dollars that are included inside of the budget, it is important to note that this comes at a cost. And that cost, we always continue, as Mr. Poole mentioned earlier, we always continue to stay within the tax levy limit, which is an important piece, as well as, when and where possible, continue to do every program at the most cost-effective way possible. Again, world-class opportunities continued, whether it's the K-8 mindfulness program, the K-12 chorus program, middle school greenhouse program, apiary program, K-12 best buddies, the unified athletics that we were just talking about earlier. These are all fantastic programs. And it is important to know for the community that it all comes at a cost. And that cost, again, we stay within the tax cap, and we continue to provide fair year-to-year budget increases. As opposed to reading each and every bullet, I chose now for each budget presentation, I'm going to do a couple of bullets for each and every evening. Just
That's a
not
good
that I'm
idea.
skipping,
That's
but
great. Yeah, smart.
there is a lot of bullets.
There sure are. We have a lot of highlights.
There is a lot to be proud of that the budget provides funding for. Outstanding achievements, again, our students achieve a lot. That is because community provides the funding and the teachers provide the opportunities. And it is important, again, 94% of all graduates attend higher education. New York State, Long Island, and Suffolk County athletic championships. Over 1,100 college credits earned annually by high school students. Again, those are tremendous achievements, and it all requires funding. Continuous investment in student health and well-being, mental health services, as Ms. Von Eschen pointed out earlier. We have 5 school counselors, 2 social workers, 6 psychologists, a consultant behaviorist, nurses. We are well above the state minimums when it comes to nurses to student ratios. We have two nurses at the high school, 2 nurses at the middle school, and there is one full-time nurse at Wading River, 1 full-time nurse at Miller Avenue, and then there's a split nurse that, based on the schedule between the 2 building principals, they are shared between the 2 buildings. By having this type of nurse coverage at the 2 secondary buildings, we are actually providing nurse coverage for after-school activities as well as before-school activities. Again, another very important safety feature for the students. North Shore Youth Council partnerships provide K-12 student support through proactive small group counseling and family resources, provide a location on the high school campus for immediate and convenient mental health support counseling. North Shore Youth Council has been a partner to the district, and again, there is a group of students that actually benefit greatly from that partnership. Graduation outcomes, overall graduation rate, 98%. Local diploma, how many students that earn a local diploma is less than 1%. Regents diplomas, 31%. Regents diplomas with advanced designations, 55%. Regents diploma with advanced designation with high honors, 14%. Regents diplomas with career technical education endorsement, 9%. Seal of civic readiness, 6%. Seal of biliteracy, 6%. Those are, again, another indicator, another statistic of what the school budget purchases. It buys great outcomes because it funds great programs. It funds very good staff also. When we start to look at year-to-year comparisons, it is important to note that the 24-25 budget included a one-time expenditure related to a transfer to capital line. I just put this particular slide in there to show, even though 23 to 24 to 24-25 was a 4% increase, we cannot forget that without that one-time transfer to capital fund line, that had an offset, a revenue offset specifically tied to it, our real expenditure increase is 2.02% from 23-24 to 24-25. That's an important piece for when you're looking at comparisons, that our six-year average, taking budget to budget increases, is a 2.80% increase. But if we were to pull out that transfer to capital line, the year-to-year increase, the average over a 6-year period, is 2.47%. When we look at the tax levy increase over 6 years is 1.75%. So we have stayed within the tax cap. Even back in 2022, there was a year, the COVID year, where we actually brought the budget in $350,000 under the allowable tax cap. We felt it was important to only burden the community with the least amount of money we actually needed for that particular year. So all those world-class opportunities, all those awards, we have continued to provide prudent, efficient budgets with very fair tax increases. We have continuously received great support over the past 5 years, ranging from a low of 73% to a high of 81% for a budget support. Since there's so much talk inside the media about federal grants, we thought we would include a small piece in this year's budget presentation about federal grants. For 2024-25, the district receives a total of $614,510 in federal grants. Our Title 1A is $55,000, Title 2A $24,000, Title 4 is $10,000, and the cumulative total of our 2 special education grants, Section 611 and 619, is a little bit under $525,000. To date, the district has not been advised that any of these grant dollars is in jeopardy based on what's happening in Washington currently. Have they been going down the past couple of years? Yes, but that's just a normal process that they have been doing. But none of them, we have been told, are in jeopardy for 25-26. And that's important to note, because 611 and 619 grants, we fully rely on those for mandated special education services. So if by the wildest chance that the federal government withheld those grants, we would have to pivot inside the general fund and find approximately $525,000 to fill that void. And we are confident that we would be able to do that in that rare chance that the grants just were mysteriously eliminated without any warning. district reserve balances, every year at the beginning of budget season, we want to show the Board of Education, the public, what is in the district reserve accounts. As Mr. Poole pointed out earlier, on the district website, all of the external audit reports where this data is compiled from is included inside of those reports. But just so it's clear, the Employee Retirement System reserve as of June 30th, 2024, has a balance of $3.2 million. The Teacher Retirement System, 2.1. Workers' compensation, a little less than 1.5. Unemployment, a little less than 1.2. The Debt Service Fund Reserve, a little less than 600,000. And the prior year state aid at the time in '24 had $1,677,000. We applied to the '24-25 budget $1 million of ERS, 0 of TRS, 550,000 of workers' compensation, 104,000 of unemployment, debt service fund 74,000, and the entire 1,676,000 of prior year state aid to fund that transfer to capital line. For 25-26, the revenue budget is reflecting a use of ERS reserve of 1 million, TRS of 565, workers' compensation of 550, unemployment 104,000, debt service fund 199,000. As far as restricted reserves, the employee benefits accrued liability reserve has a balance as of June 30, 2024, $2,651,000. That particular reserve is directly tied to separation payments related to sick leave. Any type of payouts that we are allowed to, that we pay out of that in order to pay for our post-employment benefit separation payments. And the 2021 capital reserve, June 30th, 2024, $6,879,000 was the total. Interest is allocated to these reserves annually. So at the end of every school year, we take the total value, come up with the total interest earned, allocate that across each of the reserves. Any questions on the district reserve balances?
I just have a quick question
Sure.
about how you decide, like, what percentage, particularly for the ERS and the TRS, that you would use to fund.
Sure. ERS, we typically have been applying a $1 million because that is almost the amount of the annual expenditure value. So we try to align the actual expenditure amount with the actual reserve use, so that we don't burden the taxpayer by actually using their quote-unquote savings to fund that annual expenditure. As for the teacher's retirement system, that is a little bit more of a fluctuating use. We try to keep 3 years of actual reserve balance. And as for the amount of usage, we try to apply what we're able to fund that particular reserve with the following year. So since TRS, there is a calculation mandated by the state, the maximum amount that we could fund that reserve on an annual basis. It is based on the TRS salaries. So we're able to fund that between $560,000 and $590,000, depending upon salary. So we don't, once we start to use more than we could fund it by, then we really start to cut into our fiscal stability. So that's the
Thank you.
logic between those two reserves.
Thanks.
Glenn,
Yep.
Speaking of fiscal stability, this board has been called into question in terms of being flush with cash, or having an excess amount in reserves, or having plenty of money to do things with. Can you please just speak briefly about best practices in terms of reserves, and why these amounts might be where they are at.
Okay, a couple of points to be made to that. First off, if the district had excess values inside of its reserves, both your internal audits, your external audits would have actually made comments to that effect. That is first and foremost. Second, this past spring, the New York State Comptroller's Office performed their audit on the Shoreham district. Their first phase of their audit was a full risk assessment of the district's financial activities and practices. They would have definitely pointed out to the district if there was any overfunding, as there's many Newsday articles that actually show districts that are quote, quote, hoarding money, that are well above normal, customary, typical norms that are acceptable by the Comptroller's Office. As for our district practice, we try to keep 3 years, quote, quote, inside of our reserve accounts when and where possible. So for the employee retirement system, we are able to keep that. For the workers' compensation, we are able to keep that. As far as TRS, since there's a limited amount that we could fund it, we continue to try to get that reserve account up to the highest level we can within the workable formula that the state has given us. If there's any question on, is there a reserve that could be perceived as overfunded, it's the unemployment reserve. But even the Comptroller's Office and the 2 audit companies have not told us that we're overfunded, because an unemployment reserve is for that worst-case scenario where state aid's cut, we need to raise funds, we are not successful to raise those funds, and yes, there is a large layoff. We are required, it's a mandated payment to pay that unemployment, so if I am laying off X number of people and I'm already out of money, I would be cutting more program to fund that payment. So yes, the unemployment reserve having a little less than $1.2 million, that is a strategically planned reserve for that worst-case scenario. That's the best.
Thank you.
But other than that one, there's none others up there that I would deem, or your auditors or the state deemed, that we're flush or overfunded.
I'm gonna call them prudent
Yeah.
and fiscally responsible. So because if the floor falls out and you don't have those reserves, then you're staring at a 3-month window to decide what are you cutting, are you piercing the tax levy? These reserves buy some time to make thoughtful decisions over the course of a year about what your next steps might be.
That's right.
What your next might be. So I'm gonna.
It's good budget.
It's good budgeting, it's prudent practice, and it's been the practice of the school district since Mr. Arcuri's been here.
That's right.
When Mr. Arcuri was here, there were no reserves.
Exactly.
The reserves in the school district generated an incredibly low interest rate on the bond because of the fiscal condition of the school district, directly related to the stability that the reserves provided. So it is they generate interest right now. They are generating interest every annual revenue for the school district, and it's a protection. I don't think anybody in the community is interested in a district living on the edge without the support of reserves, where if something dramatic happens, like $1 million increase in transportation costs, or this is a reality. We are a safe, harmless district to the tune of $1 million. It's not going to happen this year. It's probably not going to happen next year. It's an election year. But you can bet that if the Rockefeller study comes true, we're exposed to that. So that means that a $3 million reserve, $1 million goes out 1 year, $1 million the next year, and then there's nothing left. It buys a little time. It's prudent, and it's prudent for the students here, so that the program that they have has a chance if and when the bottom falls out. So.
And it definitely is. To Mr. Poole's point, the purpose of reserves, when I joined July 1st, 2010, the district did not have reserves. The district was in a $3.5 million deficit from the previous year, so they overspent their budget. And the Board of Education then, as well as the Board of Education today, and all of the boards of education between 2010 and 2025, has always said, we want strategic flexibility to make decisions and not be pressured. To Mr. Poole's point, without these reserves, it is this window. It is right now and here to say, what are we cutting, what are we not cutting? At least we could plan for, quote, quote, the time when aid is actually reduced.
And I also wanted to add to your comment, Katie, that, and you stated it, right? We do have an independent and an external auditor, internal and external auditor. The audit committee, which is made up of residents, also sits on that committee and hears those reports and has the opportunity to question the auditors on anything that they see in the report. So if the internal auditors, external auditors are not citing or finding an issue with that, that should provide a certain level of transparency there that we're showing.
Sure, yeah. It definitely should. And then to that point, workers' compensation reserve, the budgeted amount for that line item is about $565,000. So we are literally paying for that expense with those reserve dollars. For the employee retirement system reserve, I anticipate spending about $1.1 million. We are applying $1 million to it. So those expenses are being fully paid with actual reserve dollars. Any other questions on reserves? Great. The tax levy limit calculation, again, this is a formula provided by the New York State Comptroller's Office. It is not an optional calculation for us. For 25-26, we are still looking at a simple majority vote. We are not looking to pierce, so we are looking for a 50% plus one vote. The allowable tax levy limit with exclusions is 1.9571, an increase of $1,153,302. So our tax levy limit increase, you're going to see a couple of slides later, doesn't even cover our transportation contractual increase for 25-26. So this is the maximum amount of money that we could levy to stay within the tax cap. All anticipated pilot payments have been included. So the LIPA payment for Brookhaven, the Crosstown Cable, FTS Solar Project 2, Shoreham Solar Commons, LIPA Riverhead. The special note at the bottom is there is a pilot that's currently being finalized for the proposed battery storage facility in Shoreham. As of today, that pilot payment has not been finalized. If it's not finalized on or before March 1st, we have been told we will not receive that pilot for 25-26, so we should anticipate it for 26-27. If by some chance that pilot payment comes in between now and March 1st, there will be a slight change to our tax levy, as well as a change to our other local revenue portion of the budget.
Of course.
The calculation includes the following allowable exclusions: all debt service payments, so the payment related to the $33 million bond, and the payment related to the outstanding energy performance contract. The building aid used is based on the executive budget. If that building aid number changes when the final budget is adopted, our tax levy limit calculation will be amended to reflect the actual building aid that is included inside of the New York State budget, as well as our share of building aid related to BOCES capital expenditures and our share related to BOCES capital expenditure. I bring you through the calculation in detail. So our 24-25 tax levy was a little less than 59 million. The tax-based growth factor that is provided to us by the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, it is again another component to say, how much has the growth in our area, our brick and mortar building, increased? In this case, for Shoreham-Wading River, it increased 0.09%. That increased our levy by $53,000. Our total pilot payments, a little less than 3.2 million. We now bring our allowable tax levy change to 5.519%. Our BOCES capital, we then subtract 41,000. Our EPC payment, it is an exclusion, subtract the 642. Our bond principal and interest, subtract that payment, 2.6. Our building aid offset for BOCES, our building aid offset for Shoreham, our allowable growth factor, even though CPI is running a little less than 4%, the tax levy limit formula says, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that the comptroller's office says it's 3.95%. You can only go up by 2%. Once we factor that all in, our allowable tax levy limit before any exclusions is negative 0.2138%. It's an important piece to understand when people say we are flush with money or the district is overtaxing the residents. The district is following a formula. There is no choice of what I put into these fields. This is a chart on the comptroller's website. It is a portal. When then we add our exclusions, we begin to add back our data for 25-26. We add back the BOCES capital, we add back the EPC payment, we add back the principal and interest payment related to the bond, we subtract the debt service payment, we subtract the building aid related to BOCES, and we subtract our anticipated building aid based on the January executive run. That's how we go from a negative 0.2138 to a positive 1.9571. It's important to note that the tax levy limit calculation has nothing to do with how much is charged to town of Brookhaven, how much is charged to the town of Riverhead, when it comes to dispersing the $60,081,000 worth of tax levy. That occurs with a totally separate set of facts, a separate formula. That gets done end of September, beginning of October. I'm happy to present then on that piece, but the tax levy limit calculation is a formula that only determines what's the maximum allowable tax levy total that Shoreham-Wading River could levy without asking the public to go above a 50% vote. Any question on the formula for the tax levy?
Just a clarifying question. So when you talk about, we don't have to go into deep detail, but the town of Riverhead versus the town of
Yes.
Brookhaven, if town of Riverhead residents are seeing a 10% increase in their taxes, and it says school taxes, that's not a tax levy increase of 10%.
Correct.
It's the share that the town of Riverhead residents are making up for in that tax levy increase, whereas the town of Brookhaven residents, for example, are not increasing at all or maybe even decreasing.
Correct. 100%. Again, the school district sets the $60 million. That is step one. When the voters come to support the budget, that $60 million is actually finalized on that budget vote day. Between then and October, when the Board of Education sets the tax levy, if any changes occur that are material in nature, we have either a very large pilot was added or a pilot was actually negotiated and taken away from the district, that $60 million could change. Once we have that $60 million number as a static, solid number, we then go through a calculation called the apportionment calculation. That's based on assessed value for town of Brookhaven, controlled by the assessor's office, assessed value by the town of Riverhead, controlled by the assessor's office. There's another variable in there called an equalization rate, controlled by New York State Office of Real Property Tax Services. And that $60 million, after a calculation's done, gets apportioned to town of Riverhead, apportioned to the town of Brookhaven. The only role Shoreham-Wading River Board of Education had is in that $60 million number. Had no other role after that. The rest is a calculation.
Our tax bills are somewhat misleading in that regard.
There's the finest print on both the town of Brookhaven and town of Riverhead tax bill that will actually show you the school district's tax levy. That's the only part of that bill that's truthful, for me, from a
Five
Board of
print-
Education
yeah.
standpoint. The rest is all misleading to the reader to make it that the Board of Education is doing this.
Yeah.
I still think even with this year's tax apportionment disparity between the two towns, for my office, I had a single telephone call. When I first joined Shoreham, the first 5 or 6 years, I did a lot of presentations on tax apportionment to get people to understand the Board of Education is not in control of tax rates, tax assessment values. You guys are not responsible for any of that. I wanted to take that all off of the Board of Education's docket and bring it just to, you're responsible to the $60 million. That's it. The rest is up to the tax assessor's office. Variables all outside of the control of the Board of Education.
Mr. Arcuri, before you move
Sure.
on, just my favorite subject, pilots, right?
Yeah.
The LIPA Brookhaven pilot,
Yes.
is that the one that we,
The LIPA Brookhaven pilot is the peaker
it's
plant.
the peaker plant? Okay.
Yes.
And what's the value of that one currently? Do you remember? Is it 2 million or 1 million?
No, 1.3.
It was closer to 1,
okay.
right? Okay. And based on your special note down below for the battery storage, is there a, so it basically reads, the pilot agreement related to the proposed battery storage facility has not been finalized and is not included in the tax levy limit calculation. What is the process by which it's finalized? Because that's outside of our control, obviously.
Yep, I will.
Do we know that answer yet?
I do.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I do
yes or
know-
no, really? I was
The
looking for.
question that you asked me is, what is the point of finalization?
Yeah.
It is when the Brookhaven Industrial Development Agency
Right.
and the actual petitioner, in this case, it is a KCE, when they sign the actual contract.
Right.
There's a 10-year or 15-year contract associated with it. When that signature happens, I get a copy of it. I should say the district gets a copy of it. And that will then tell me what their payment schedule is, such as an amortization type schedule, and tell me how much are we going to receive in year 1, how much we're going to receive in year 2, so on and so forth. What are the increases after year 3? Typically, the first 3 years are the same value. And then year 4, there's a slight increase. When that happens, we would increase this value here. When that value goes up.
I'm
you-
sorry, I didn't see where you were pointing. What value?
See the value there?
No, I can't.
I apologize.
I really-
I don't see
I
it either,
really-
so.
Thank you. Let me show you that.
Give us column and cell number.
So there's the bottom left-hand corner, 3,242,000.
Yes,
When that number goes higher, your allowable levy goes lower. So a pilot payment will bring your levy down, but then on the other section, in other local revenue, I will add the pilot payment in. Because a pilot payment reduces the tax levy, because the actual recipient of the pilot payment is going to be sending a separate check. Make sense?
yes.
And to that point, are we looking at a one-time check, or is that worked out with the IDA in terms of how the payment process comes out for that pilot?
The payment, that will be worked out with the IDA. Typically, it is one check a year.
Okay.
In the pilots that I currently have, they don't split the payments.
And the timing of that check and how it impacts, because we have
It's
revised,
similar-
right?
It's similar to a tax levy. I start to get them around December.
Okay, so I guess even, is it worth even having the conversation of, a TAN, for a tax anticipation note, to cover this, and, you know where
I
I'm
know where you're
going?
going. All of that would be wonderful. If
Yeah.
the taxing authority would start to pay me July, when I start incurring bills, it would be a great day.
Yeah,
But I don't foresee that coming
okay.
to,
I know we're being conservative
coming
here.
to fruition.
Yeah,
I don't.
okay. No, I know we're being conservative, and I just looked at it as, if they're signing these contracts, and contracts happen later, right? It's a whole school year that goes by that we don't really see those. So if there was a way, again, to advocate or reach out to the IDA to try to get this agreement. And I understand that, I'm sure the developer's got his timeline, but we don't know what that timeline is at this point, I don't believe.
We know the timeline right now is if they sign the pilot agreement before March 1st,
Oh, okay.
we will actually receive the pilot in 25-26 school year. That's what the chief officer over at the Brookhaven
IDA.
Industrial Development
Okay.
Agency told us. I have a great rapport with her, and if she calls me between now and February 28th and says, you're going to get that payment, I will almost guarantee you I'm going to get that
Okay, that's fair.
payment.
All right.
She's really,
I just wanted to
she
understand the
treats the
timing of
district
that.
great. I mean, they're very transparent with us.
Okay, thank you for that, appreciate that.
Moving on to the transportation RFP. So the current contract with First Student, our contracted bus company, expires June 30th, 2025. Mr. Poole and I had multiple discussions with a representative in our area to try to extend our existing contract that we only issued, we went out to RFP in 2020, so it's only 5 years old. Prior to that RFP, the district renewed the contract without an RFP for close to 20 years.
Wow.
So there were a lot of years in that equation,
Right.
maybe 18, don't quote me, but close to 20, where New York State sets a consumer price index value that a transportation contract can be increased by. Specifically, so it is not an arbitrary number. And we tried many times for many months to try to get the contractor to use that percentage and let us extend our contract. There were a number of reasons to try to keep that relationship going. The primary driver at that time related to the zero-emission bus mandate. We really did not want to issue an RFP without more guidance from the state regarding that, but it was to no avail. So we waited as late as we could, and December 5th, we issued an RFP for transportation of pupils. We issued a 5-year RFP. Again, it's a 5-year contract. You usually get a better price when you're locking in a rate for a longer period of time. You also could possibly attract other vendors because it is a longer commitment. Maybe bring someone, rent some space over by the old Grumman property, maybe a little bit north of us, to try to make it as appealing as possible, as well as, again, First Student is our local transportation provider. They are our current provider. They have provided great service for us. We issued the RFP. There was a single respondent for all of the services, whether it's home to school for large buses, home to school for vans, private and parochial, athletic trips and field trips, summer home to school. There was a single respondent. The previous RFP, we at least had a respondent for our vans, field trips, athletics from another vendor. They did not end up winning it, but at least it was a competitive process. Having just a single respondent, we did score. We did create a evaluation committee, evaluated the RFP. Again, First Student gives us great service. There's not a complaint that I can make about. I have colleagues where they make choices before school opens. Which particular runs are we going to combine today because a driver called out or a number of drivers called out? A couple of weeks ago, there were 14 drivers out with the flu, and we didn't miss a single route. So their service is great.
I thought I saw you driving a bus.
That was Mr. LaSquadra. He has a license for that.
I'm sure it does.
So when we dive into the numbers, the percentage increases for the great service that we receive are a lot steeper than I would have hoped. For large buses, typically we use 5 to 7 hour buses. That's why the 4-hour bus is only a 12% increase, but between 5 and 7 hours, we're looking at 24.88% increase in cost from one year to the next. As for vans, I'm looking at a 44% increase. Now, granted, for this particular school year, all of our vans are brand new. They're wonderful. They have air conditioning, they have the cameras, they have everything we need. The kids have great new seats. Someone's paying for that. Clearly, we're paying for it. We have had telephone calls with the a vendor. To date, we have not come to any type of a concession, and I'm not expecting, last time we had the same conversations with them, we came to concessions almost in September, continuing to ask for reductions. We award the RFP based on how it was sent to us, and if we're fortunate enough to, where they're able to give us some sort of a smoothing out, some sort of a concession, we will work with them. But as it stands today, the increases that we're presented with equate to, when I jump to large buses, daily vans, shared daily vans, matrons, we are looking at, for 24-25, we paid $4,103,000. We're going to be paying $5,278,000 for the same level of service. When I go a little further, I add on athletics, I add on field trips, and as everyone starts to yawn, I'm going to go faster.
I'm
sorry. No, as everyone starts to yawn, as I'm seeing me yawning, start to say, I better talk quicker. I apologize. I got off to a slow start, but I'm catching up now. The increase for year to year from 24-25 to 25-26 is $1,247,567.
What's the percentage increase? Can you do the math?
Can I do the math? It's about a 38%
38%.
increase when I'm looking at year to year, but it's, I don't break it down that way, Megan, particularly because it's important, the different vans, the different categories,
Yeah.
whether it's, so I really try to show them separately, because once I blend it that way, the 25% increase for large buses is actually what other districts are getting across the island. We are not alone in that,
You answered my
in that
first
area.
question. That was my first question.
We are not alone.
Okay.
We are not alone in 25 to 30% range. The vans are definitely a little bit steep. Now, there's possibility that the previous contract, the van rates were low because maybe they had a feeling that there was going to be a competitor bidding with them for that, responding with them for that at that time. Because the van rate is a little bit, at my starting point for vans in 24-25 is a little bit lower than some other districts. However, as I've told the contractor and as I've told my colleagues, I really don't care what someone else pays. I just care that I need $1,247,000 and my tax levy is only going up $1,100,000.
Yeah.
And there's, to just go off on a tangent for a couple of seconds,
Yep.
transportation's a mandated service. The only way to change it is through a ballot and voter approval. Transportation contract increases are not an exclusion within the tax cap. So the Board of Education for 25-26, you can't modify your transportation plan. You can't modify it significantly. You could do minor changes, but you can't say no more transportation, parents have to drop their kids off. That actually requires voter approval.
And some parking lot redesign.
That's true.
So
Some serious parking lot redesign, yeah.
Yeah, everything, more than just the.
Yeah.
So other districts are experiencing these large increases for renewed bids for
Definitely.
transportation. So what do you think, it's more of a comment, what do you think occurred? We had a 5-year agreement previously. What did we see as normal increments? Was it just like CPI at that point, Glenn? Was it?
We saw 2.5% after the first year of the 2020 renewal.
Yep.
we actually saw about a 27% increase
So
for
we
that,
did.
for the first RFP.
So this is their normal way of, I'd say, doing
It
business?
is their normal way, but the little difference that I'm being told,
Yep.
when we RFP'd in 2020, that was before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
their costs have increased. Again, we have tremendous driver retention in Shoreham.
Mm-hmm.
This yard is one of First Student's best yards analytically looking at their data. Driver turnover, accidents, mechanical work. This particular yard, the statistics are staggeringly higher than any other yard. So there is a high level of service. There is a high level, the buses look good. You don't get too many breakdowns. You get one, maybe two breakdowns a month, 2 months, and that's great compared to what others have. But since COVID, there have been large increases in their insurance. Insurance in all the different facets, whether it's workers' compensation, whether it is liability insurance. Looking at their financials that they submitted with their RFP, they're also seeing tremendous increases in their interest costs for borrowing. They're not buying these buses with cash. They are buying them on time. So now their interest, because I had financials from 2020, and I had financials from 2019 and 2024. Comparing those financials, because again, that's one of the scoring metrics. We had the external auditor look at those financials for us to say, look at how much 8% borrowing now impacts a company.
Of course.
That's rolling down to us also.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Even with declining enrollment,
Say it again.
even with declining enrollment, our costs keep going up.
Katie, you bring up a great point.
Level down,
Declining enrollment would be a wonderful thing if I could limit it to a particular school.
Right.
If you could get rid of
Couple bus routes.
X number of kids inside of a specific grade in a specific building, I would do great. But if you spread out 3 kids across 12 grades, it doesn't help my busing, it does not help my staffing, it doesn't help anything for me. And that's typically how declining enrollment works.
Right.
I mean, kindergarten had that spike once, but other than that, it's pretty stable. But our declining enrollment has typically been spread out, and it just does not. And we have packed so much inside our academic school day by taking advantage of that window. Any type of quote, transportation modification that would increase ride time could potentially impact start and end times. And now the real question is, how much am I really going to save? Versed on the imposition of a parent, versed on the loss of instruction. Will we have to look at that one day inside of the future? It's a possibility, but for this purpose today, I don't believe there's much efficiency that we could choose to explore without honestly impacting start and end times, program, and we just got a 9-period day at the middle school that's working out great. Last thing that I want to do is impact that.
Especially since we're just coming off of a study for efficiencies.
Correct.
They've been exhausted.
And even before I joined Shoreham, 2009, there was a traffic safety study conducted to try to see, could we create a walking zone? The answer is no. Due to North Country, 25A, and William Floyd, due to the lack of sidewalks in many areas, they were not allowed to create walking zones. So I have a bus stop pickup across the street from the Wading River School. They get on the bus, they pull in the driveway, they get off the bus.
Right.
It's a great system.
I mean, I love it here, and I wouldn't change where I live. But I just want to say, for anyone who says, why can't we have this when other districts have it? They just need to watch some of these presentations
Agreed.
we can't have a walking zone. No.
Agreed.
So we can likely expect that kind of increase year over year.
No, because they
Why?
actually gave me my 5
We have a 5-year look.
Year
Yeah.
2 is 4%, year 3 is
Oh, they did.
4%, year 5 is 3%, year 6 is, year 4 is 3, year 5 is 3.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you on that, so there's no caveat on that 4% in 28, 29? It's not pegged to any possibilities of changes?
It is pegged to verbal negotiations,
Okay,
which are currently ongoing, and any type of reduction that the district might be able to negotiate would come with, we first award this RFP, we send it up to the state for approval, then we come back with another resolution for a type of a concession, understanding the steps that we did last time.
okay.
So there's the ability to year over year make revisions?
We're trying, right?
Okay,
We're trying. We're definitely trying to.
Okay.
And they are supportive, but in the same breath, they're also saying their costs have gone up. Their driver retention here is because of their rate of pay they're paying their drivers.
Yeah, I was honing in on certain unfunded mandates that are out there for zero-emission vehicles. And so that's really not captured in this 4%, right?
It is not, it is definitely not. They can't go above the 4%.
Right.
This is if there's no negotiations, they agreed to provide us transportation services for 5 years at the rates listed on these particular slides. That's what they provided us. Whether they are capturing their zero emission bus costs or whether they're not. This is what they agreed to.
Got it. Okay, that was really the
We are
question.
contractually awarding that.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Proposition 1, we get to the 25-26 budget. Again, it's important to note the district spent a lot of time developing, renewing its strategic plan. The 5 pillars of the strategic plan, the 25-26 budget aligns to it. It just doesn't align to one pillar. There are many different pillars where the budget covers multiple pillars. I try to capture that on these particular slides. Pillar 1 was communication with stakeholders. When the strategic plan started, there was a lot of questions on communication. So Mr. Poole worked tirelessly creating multiple ways to communicate to all of the stakeholders, whether it's through Parent Square platform, Google Classroom, district-wide website, social media, the review publication, board advisory committees, district committees, whether it's mental health, wellness, health and safety, phone system, network infrastructure. All of those items require funding. Healthy, safe, and engaging learning spaces, whether it's regular building updates and maintenance, technology infrastructure, athletic facility improvements, security systems, HVAC systems. Again, another key piece that came out of the strategic planning committee was continue what we currently have. Keep our spaces healthy and safe. Do not let the buildings fall into disarray as they previously did. Maintain high-quality programming. Again, in order to maintain high-quality programming, you have to be fiscally responsible. You need to manage the dollars. And as well as continue to review what's currently working, what currently isn't, what needs to be revised, what needs to be adjusted. That is a quality assurance process. Use all of the pieces available to you to ensure that what we're spending money on, we're actually getting the desired return for. I have no idea how that happened. That is not how the presentation is supposed to be. Enhance student graduation outcomes. Ricky, your computer's playing tricks on me. Just want you to know that. Now it's gone. I guess it's time to, it's time to reboot.
Shut you down.
That's a graduation outcome right there.
Someone pulled the plug.
He's fixing it, I think, for you. There you go. Oh, man. No.
It's installing an update.
I think we're all tired.
Good point, Mr. LaSquadra.
That was a good point.
And I do apologize for my slow start earlier. I do apologize for that.
Why would you
It
apologize?
took a couple of seconds to
Why
get
would you
myself
apologize?
back
It's
to
all
my
right.
focus.
No, no
Glenn,
apology.
Glenn,
No.
I do.
listen,
Do you have that page up?
we're ready when you're ready, Glenn. That's how we look at it.
Thank you.
Do I go hold the phone book up there? Looks good on our screen.
Glenn, after that, what's next? Is it employee salaries we have to go through?
We go through salaries, benefits,
Hold.
transportation, then we do Proposition 2 and Proposition 3.
Okay, thank you.
And Brian,
I'm just trying to level set for myself what we're looking at.
we're going fast. I'm going.
I'm just,
I don't know what happened to it.
I think we're gonna take a bio
Computer
break
crash.
though.
It's
Well, we're on
as it should be on ours.
Do
Say it
you
again.
have the, you
as
want to
it
keep
should be
going on the
ours.
pillars? You
I
have the-
can.
You have the
I
hard copy?
definitely have it all.
Oh, hold
He's
it.
got it.
I think
Okay.
he's got it. Hold on.
One more.
Let's see.
One more.
One more.
Okay, I'm going to talk.
Let's go one more.
We're
I was
talking.
gonna say, you know
See
what?
if the other ones,
Yeah.
yeah.
There you go.
Just go from there.
That
Okay, so
works.
maintain
we're on page
whole
29,
child
except for
programming.
four.
Again, it is important to provide funding to cover programming for the entire child, whether it's a social emotional learning, whether it's Project Adventure, physical education, interscholastic athletics, extracurricular clubs and activities, year-round community programs, extensive music programs. Again, what was pointed out earlier, the world-class opportunities, those two particular slides, everything listed on it are above and beyond the state mandate. And we want to retain that programming. The 25-26 draft budget maintains all programs that are aligned to the strategic plan, maintains current class size, includes funding for additional field trips and co-curricular activities, technology conferences, software and subscriptions, includes funding to replace 12 interactive smart boards. After these 12, with the exception of small group instructional spaces, all of our smart boards throughout the district have been replaced with interactive panels. No more adjusting lenses, shutting off lights, direct impact to the classroom instruction. A great job by Mr. Esposito and Ms. Nitti and the entire technology team.
Glenn, this might be a hard question to answer, but what's the shelf life of the new smart board?
8 to 10 years, from what we are told. And knowing the team here, they'll probably get them longer. They really do great maintenance.
Thanks.
The usability of those are just phenomenal compared to the smart boards too. Just-
Mr.
The
Poole's
functionality is
thrilled.
just
He
great.
has not seen lights off when he goes into a building.
They just, drawing on them, everything. It's just
Yeah,
unbelievable.
of course, you know.
No, they're clear, and it's enhanced instruction for sure.
100%.
And I'll just jump really quick. If someone looks at last year's presentations, we were supposed to be purchasing more in 25-26. However, Mr. Esposito was able to work with the vendor. They found a model that was equally as good as the model we originally first spec'd, but the price was materially cheaper, and the performance of them is equal to the higher model. So we were able to purchase a lot more than what we originally planned for in 24-25. Add up to 6 contracted armed guards and cover the increase in contract transportation, which I mentioned earlier, $1,247,567. Reflects reductions of contingent funds and, where prudent, reduce budget codes to align closer to actual expenditure amounts and/or reduce margin. So that's the efficiency process. That's where the district, whether it's the building level principal, the directors, central office, look through their budget and, when and where possible, reduce it. Cut down some flexibility that you haven't been using. Every year that we do that, it's a single reduction just for that year. So I don't have it cumulative. So when we put everything together, it takes a little bit more revenue, it takes a little bit more cost cutting in order to balance the budget. Increases use of appropriated fund balance, increases the amount of debt service funds applied, and as in years past, funds with in the Teachers Retirement System Reserve have been applied as a revenue source. Proposed budget, as I mentioned earlier, reflects a 1.29% increase, $1,140,611 over the previous year's budget. Summary by category. This is a particular slide that we've been using now since 2011, so people can compare previous budget presentations. Tonight, we're going to cover three categories. We're going to cover employee salaries, employee benefits, and transportation. After tonight, we would have covered almost 80% of the entire budget. When it comes to transportation, it's really important to meet the state's requirement to show the voters, the Board of Education, that this budget contains the first year of a 5-year contract. Districts are not allowed to enter into multi-year contracts with the exception of transportation and collective bargaining agreements. So it's a special note for 25-26. The district will enter into a 5-year transportation agreement with First Student, Inc. for one 65, 66 passenger buses, 2 20 to 30 passenger vans, 3 athletic trips, 4 field trips, 5 summer transportation services. The first year of the 5-year agreement starts in 25-26 and has an aggregate expense of $5,877,341, and the anticipated estimated total of the 5-year agreement is $31,638,976 based on current levels, and the agreement ends June 30th, 2030. For employee salaries, we are looking at a 1.86% year-over-year increase. We're looking at employee benefits of a 3% increase, and transportation, a 22% increase.
Mr. Curie, is there ever a workaround for multi-year contracts for vendors or anything? You said you can't?
Nope, because budgets, you could enter into a contract that is conditional upon if your budget passes.
Okay.
But transportation, there's not a condition. It's a mandated service. Employee salaries, salaries for all district staff are included in this category. Salaries are forecast based on contractual obligations outlined within the collective bargaining agreements. There is one year left on the administrator's agreement. The teachers' agreement runs out June 30th, 2025. Negotiations are set to start soon. CSEA agreement runs through June 30th, 2026. All contractual salary budgets are developed each year to align with the program plan for the following year. So we just don't roll over the previous year's salaries. We start with what is our program needs for 25-26, and then we assign staff to those positions. So we basically start from a zero-based budget approach when it comes to salaries. And all non-contractual salary codes have been reviewed and adjusted. So whether it's substitute pay, whether it's lane changes, whether it's professional development, anywhere where we could tighten up the budget code to align closer to what we plan on spending, we continue to try to do. $730,000 increase from 24-25. As I mentioned earlier, percent change of 1.86, and salaries makes up 44.83% of the budget. If you go back about 5 years, salary used to make up more than 50% of the budget. We're starting to show how salaries are no longer making up as much of a portion of the budget because other areas, due to rising costs, are increasing at a rate greater than salaries are increasing. It's an important thing to note because that is changing. I used to be 80% of our budget was just salaries and benefits. Now 80% of our budget is salaries, benefits, and transportation. It's a key thing to realize how operating costs, exclusive of salaries, are rising at a faster pace than salaries and benefits. Employee benefits, teachers' retirement system. According to the teachers' retirement system, their contribution rate is estimated to be 9.59% for the following year. a rate decrease of 5.14%. Employee retirement system, a decrease again by 7.82%, looking at 16.5%. We anticipate health plan premiums and Medicare Part B will increase. For 2026, we have projected a 12% increase, and all benefits codes were reviewed and were projected, either based on historical average or information provided by the district's third-party representative. Benefits are increasing a little bit less than 724,000, percent increase 3.07%. Benefits makes up 27% of the budget, and we're a little less than 73% when we add salaries and benefits together. Transportation, we really talked about transportation before, why the cost increased. Just as a quick overview, the transportation budget covers all the transportation needs for the district, as well as fuel for the buses. Private and parochial transportation, the deadline for application is April 1st. And we have 9 private and parochial schools within our transportation area. We only have funding in the budget for 4 buses. We used to have funding in the budget for 9 buses. As rates continue to rise, as things got tighter, we continue to reduce those contingencies. That's one of the efficiencies that we currently reduced. It is important to note that if parents get their applications in by April 1st, and if there's this run on private school, we might have to do some jockeying of money in other areas to cover this cost. 22% increase, transportation, like I said. With transportation, we're a little less than 80% between salary, benefits, and transportation. We covered 80% of the budget. Looking at the budget as a summary, expenditure budget increase 1.29%, tax levy, as I mentioned before, 1.9571%. State aid is currently projected using the January executive run as a decrease of $203,717. Other local revenue has a slight increase of $110,000. And the use of fund balance and reserves, as Mr. Poole mentioned earlier in his opening comments, we are relying on additional appropriated fund balance, so we are applying more savings that we currently have in the 24-25 budget that we're projecting to apply towards the 25-26 budget by $1,066,998. The tax reduction reserve, we are applying 0 because we don't have any more prior year state aid. So there is a reduction there. That was tied to the previous transfer to capital line. And as I mentioned earlier, retirement system using the same million as the previous year. This year we are applying $565,000 of the teacher's retirement system reserve. We didn't apply any the previous year. Unemployment reserve, the same $104,000. Workers' compensation, $550,000. Debt service fund, we increased the application. Again, trying to stay aligned to having a 3-year amount in that reserve account. By using the 199, we then still have 2 more years left to apply that as a revenue source. Any questions on the budget summary? Great. Other important budget development dates. At the March 11th meeting, we're going to cover district-wide expenses, debt and transfers, facilities, and special education. Ricky, we need to get a different laptop for next meeting. It's definitely getting tired. Proposition 2 is the request to the voters to spend funds within the 2021 capital reserve to do specific capital work. So if this proposition receives voter support, there will be no cost to the taxpayer to complete this work. There will be no increase to the tax levy to complete this work. The total cost of the proposition is $6,879,501. Work listed below may be eligible for building aid. Our current building aid percentage is 35.9%. I just want to elaborate quickly, may be eligible. Majority of the work is going to be eligible. The question is, when Governor Cuomo was in office, he was threatening building aid. I don't want to stand up here and say we're going to get building aid. If everything stays the way it is today, we're going to get building aid on more than 90% of this particular work. We're going to get building aid on it, if it stays the way the rules are today. You can't qualify for building aid until you submit your building application.
Mr. Curie, just a quick question. If you're saying to the public in Proposition 2, these are your project descriptions.
Yep.
And then you don't get the building aid that is intended, or inflation kicks in and you're not able to cover it with the allotted funds.
Yep.
You just not do it?
Correct. We always create a project list that is initially based on preliminary cost estimates that are greater than the allowable funds that we actually have. We count on good fortune, count on responsible bids that come in cheaper, so we could accomplish more work when possible. When we go out to bid, we will have a base bid and add a number of alternates to it, so that we could try to accomplish and spend as much money as we can to complete as much work as possible, because it's directly related to classroom instruction, directly related to the kids.
And this reserve is a restricted reserve, meaning that it's
This is a
reserved for a specific use? So
Yes.
it's not that we can just use this money for anything else necessarily?
Nope, a capital reserve requires 2 voter approvals. You're gonna see Proposition 3, I'm asking for another permission to establish a capital reserve. When you ask for voter approval to establish a capital reserve, there's a strict group of projects that you're able to complete with those funds. And when you want to use those funds, you need to ask for voter approval again. So we asked for voter approval to establish the May 21 capital reserve. Now we're asking voter approval to spend from that capital reserve.
And I know I've talked about this in the past, but the 36% that we get as a district, has the ship sailed on advocacy to change that formula? And
The ship has never sailed, but it is important to know, if they change me to 45%, you get to pick the district of who's going down.
I'm okay with that.
I'm sure that you are. But that is the anomaly that the state is up against, in order to say, how are they going to reproportion a district's building aid?
Right.
Just equalize.
It's more likely to go, that's a Pandora's box. If we open up that door, it could go the other way.
Yeah.
Like the Rockefeller study. There's nothing good from the Rockefeller study for Shoreham-Wading River Foundation aid. So, just.
Got it.
The discrepancies are so large that it's alarming.
Sorry, I didn't have a better answer.
It's okay.
During the October, November, and December Space and Facilities Committee meetings, a number of potential capital projects were presented to the committee. I probably presented Mr. Rossini and I over $40 million worth of projects. Even though we only had a little less than $7 million to work with, we brought a number of projects to them in order for the committee to decide on what do they feel best to make their decision. So what came out of it is, in Miller Avenue, classroom ceiling lighting replacement in 14 classrooms. In Wading River, partial exterior window and door replacement. When we do the exterior window and door replacement inside of that building, then all the windows and doors inside of that building will be new. So anything we didn't capture with the bond dollars from 2015, we will be capturing now. Middle school science rooms and RISE classroom interior renovation for 7 classrooms. Replace acoustical ceilings, lights, HVAC modifications, casework replacement, flooring, remove dividing partitions and tracks. There are tracks in the ceiling from when the building was partitioned differently, and there's a different ceiling on one side of the classroom than the other side of the classroom, it's time to take that stuff out, take out these dividing partitions that no longer operate, replace appliances inside the home ec classroom, and other incidentals. As for Shoreham-Wading River High School, site construction, replacement of the synthetic turf and drainage improvements at Kootenella Field, structural respray of track and event surfaces and striping and installed perimeter trench drains between the track and field. We put the synthetic field in 2015, the summer of 2015. It has a useful life between 10 and 12 years. We want to have the funds ready and available so we could go out to bid. We could submit to the state for a building permit, then go out to bid, so we are ahead of the problem before the field starts to deteriorate. A district-wide technology projects and equipment replacement, switches, printers, firewalls, STEM devices, virtual infrastructure, power supply devices, end-user devices, whether it be iPads, Macs, laptops, and other incidentals. Now, there's one more note there that if favorable costs are received during the bid process, we will do additional casework at the Miller Avenue building. We made a conscious decision inside of Space and Facilities for Miller Avenue to do the classroom ceiling and lighting first before we do the casework. If we are able to have good fortune and things come in cheaper on the other projects, we will look to expand on the Miller Avenue project and do additional casework there. That's how the proposition's worded. Any questions on Proposition 2? I'm gonna have plenty of other opportunities to read the ballot language, so we're gonna skip this one.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna jump through a couple of pictures. Classroom ceilings, it is the ceilings that we are looking to replace. Eliminate those drop-down lights, lithium classrooms. Again, just some more pictures of ceilings, just so there's a flavor. Again, it's more for the voters, the community members looking at it, than it is, you guys do the building walkthroughs, so
Walkthroughs,
you
we
see
saw
it
it, yeah.
firsthand. Windows, when they did the extension on Wading River, they actually used residential aluminum windows when they did the extension. So the windows are long overdue to be replaced. It's important to know all emergency windows are operational, they function, they open rather easily. Some of the windows have either a wooden stick to keep them, the sash from moving, or a block of wood from someone pushing them in. There's some deterioration down on the bottom frames of some of the door panels. Middle school, again, this is the old science classrooms that we're looking to change the casework in.
Would that be?
Picture on the right is a science classroom that was renovated my first year here in 2010. Just so you have a little bit of an idea. Inside the same building, that's a new classroom. So that classroom on the right-hand side is a 15-year-old classroom, and the one on the left is an original classroom.
That's what I was gonna ask you too, like the Miller Ave pictures too, that's like.
Original to the building.
Original to the building.
Original to the building.
So we're
Remind me
talking-
of the year again?
1970s?
Right.
Yeah,
1970s.
1970s. You can tell by those colors.
I still see my name on there.
Not me. Not I, said the wise man.
Ricky's trying to wake us all
You
up.
trying to take me to go home?
Just gonna turn the lights off.
It is a quick thing I just want to point out for that renovated space on the right-hand side. The students here, the staff here at that building take such great care and pride inside of that casework. You would not know it's 15 years old. When I brought the district
No, it looks new.
architect,
Looks new right now.
architect through, he was like, you just wouldn't even know it. So it's a testament to the students, the staff, how well they take care of stuff. The home ec classroom, that is the home ec classroom of the high school, just so not the home ec, the RISE classroom at the high school, just so you have an idea of what it's going to look like. The one on the left is the middle school, the one on the right is the high school. The Kootenella Field, again, as I mentioned earlier, the field is still usable. It's in great shape. The concussion rating, the GMAX rating is nearly at the original rating. The track is on the outside. The drain is going to go between the track and turf. District-wide technology project, equipment replacement, lists out all the actual equipment. Proposition 3, any question on Proposition 2? Proposition 3, we are asking the voters authorization to establish a capital reserve. There's no cost to the taxpayer to establish this reserve. Voter approval is needed to establish and spend from this reserve fund. Establishing or spending from this reserve will have no impact on the tax levy in any year. The purpose of this reserve is to plan for future capital work. Funds in this reserve may earn interest. Establishing this reserve and funding this reserve before the work is needed would ensure that there is no impact on the operating budget or the tax levy. The maximum amount of this reserve is $7.5 million. Probable term is 10 years. And the source of funding from time to time would be either budgetary appropriations, unappropriated fund balances from general fund as authorized by the Board of Education, and transfers from other reserves as authorized by law. I'll read the ballot language the next meeting. Any questions on Proposition 3? On the district website, on the parent guardian section, you could find 2025-26 budget information, and on the left side, all previous year's budgets. You could see the history all the way back to 2010. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alfieri.
Thank you.
Should we clap for him since?
Oh, yeah.
There you go, Jerry. All right. Okay, next up will be our votes and resolutions. First, we have our approval of our January 28th, 2025 regular public meeting minutes. May I get a motion? Katie, second, Jim Lockhart. Any discussion or questions? Okay to vote? All in favor? 5-0. Next is our approval of our February 11th, 2025 regular public meeting minutes. May I get a motion? Jim and Megan, any discussion or questions? Okay to vote? 5-0. Approval of the CPSE, CSE, and 504 meeting summary memo dated February 12th, 2025. May I get a motion? Henry. Second, Jim. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 5-0. Next up is our January 2025 Treasurers Report. May I get a motion? Jim, second, Katie. Any discussion or questions on the Treasurers Report? All in favor? 5-0. Next up of our Board of Education resolutions, there is one. Number 2425-132, the annual budget vote. May I get a motion, please? Katie, second, Jim. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 5-0. Next up is our curriculum and instruction resolutions. I've got 5 of these. May I take them as a block? Can I
Yes.
take them? Yep. They go from 2425-133 through 2425-137. May I get a motion? Henry and Megan, any discussion or questions on these? All in favor? 5-0. I do want to wish the wrestling, they're going, I just saw that. So this weekend is our, I can't speak anymore. Our high school wrestler, I can't do it. It's upstate New York this weekend, so I
In
want to wish
Albany.
our wrestling team all the best.
And then our cheer,
Cheer the following weekend, yeah.
I was just going to, thank you.
Dates?
Yes, please.
yeah.
So good luck to our teams this weekend and next weekend. Okay. Next up is our business and operations resolutions. There are 12 of these, okay to take as a section. Okay. They go from 2425-138 through 2425-149. Can I get there? Okay. May I get a motion, please? Katie, second, Jim L. Any discussion or questions on these? All in favor? 5-0. don't think I need to say anything. I think I did that. Okay. Next up is our personnel. May I get a motion, please? Katie, second Jim. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 5-0. Ms. Kirschus, any other communications? Okay. Any other comments from our residents?
If I may.
Sure.
I will try to keep this brief, in an hour. Again, Dan LaSquadro
Yep.
from Upper Cross and Shoreham. It's something to do with the street because the other gentleman who also stayed is from the same block. But I just wanted to actually give you a brief update because I know this board is very interested, as well as the administration, on the zero emission requirements coming
buses.
out of the state.
Yep.
We were facing the same regulations, similar regulations, but ours were to take effect January 1st of 2025, this year, under something called ACT, the ACT, Advanced Clean Truck Regulations, that the DC and NYSERDA were going to impose on all municipalities. We were going to have to buy one electric vehicle in order to get credit to purchase 6 diesel vehicles. I am a member of the executive board of the State Association of Highway Superintendents, and because of my background in the field, I grew up around the auto body industry and worked for State Farm for 10 years before losing my mind and running for public office. I was actually made point person on this issue for the State Association. And I negotiated with the governor's office and DC and NYSERDA, and we got a stay of execution, as I like to call it, for 2 years. They pushed back the implementation of the regulation until 2027, which is ironically when the school bus regulation is coming forward. But we have done a great deal of work on this issue. And one of the areas we have focused on is advanced road deterioration for the additional axle weight that these buses have. This is akin to running heavy trucks over residential roadways up to 8 times a day. You're really looking at a state spec necessary to carry this type of axle weight. And residential roadways do not have that type of surface. Usually, we're looking at about an 8-inch pavement section, maybe maximum 12 to 19 inches of a total road bed. And most of our older residential roads, which were not built to those specifications, don't even have that. One of the other areas we focused on, excuse me, is our electric grid capacity. And we have made a great deal of headway in that. And I don't know if they are going to be reaching out to you or to the bus companies, because our school district, I know some school districts have their own fleet of buses. We use an outside provider. But the state has required every energy provider across the state to audit their local municipalities, counties, towns, villages, for what our electrical needs would be to electrify our fleet. I see this as a great step. I see it as an acknowledgement on the part of the state that despite the good goals of trying to reduce emissions, that there are so many impediments right now to getting to that point, that I think this audit is going to be very enlightening. So if you are approached, or if our provider is approached for this data, I urge you to provide it in a timely fashion, because we are obviously going to be doing that, as are all the other road maintenance departments across the state. And the state is going to compile that and see what it would take for the grid. I think it's going to be very obvious the current grid infrastructure could not support the number of charging stations that would be required to do this. And they're going to assign a dollar figure and a time frame to upgrade the electric system to accomplish this. And I think that's going to very clearly show that the timelines that have been put forward at this point exactly, don't mesh. So I think that was a very positive step. It is something that we are looking at very closely. That, along with the enhanced road deterioration, and one of the terms that we have coined is we don't want to see the most expensive vehicles in our fleet be the least valuable. And that is something, unfortunately, that we are looking at right now, especially for us as road maintenance. Right now, there is not even an electric dump truck engineered, let alone manufactured, that can meet our needs to plow roads, haul material, and do the other work involved. We're working very closely with the manufacturers on this. So I think despite the initial trepidation that this was coming down the pike hard and fast, no pun intended, but it seems like the brakes are being pumped, and that we are making progress in facing the realities of the impediments to the implementation of something on a scale like this, and what the obstacles would be. So I just wanted to give you, a little bit of an update from what we're seeing from a road maintenance standpoint, and any vehicles that are used in any form for maintenance of roadways, whether it be plowing, paving, street sweeping, basin cleaning, anything like that, even if it's only for a de minimis amount of its life cycle, have been already excluded from that regulation for the next 2 years. So I think because of all of this, we have reason to be optimistic that the implementation of any of these programs, will be done with an eye towards the realistic opportunity that we would have to get it done, and not just looking at it as a utopian goal, which unfortunately is what we seem to be up against initially. And it was a scary time because at the end of last year, dealers were not taking orders in New York State. And that was a very scary place to be, that we didn't even know if we could get trucks at the end of last year. And those orders reopened once that 2-year extension was granted. And just last month, we found out about the energy audit. So again, if you or the vendors are approached about those audits by the energy company, it is absolutely a legitimate request, and I think that is going to be helpful to all of us in establishing whether or not this can be done within the timeframes that they're discussing, which I think the obvious answer to that will be it cannot be done. So again, thank you. I was happy to stay tonight because I, like you, Glenn, have a sickness and enjoy budgeting.
But I'm in good company now.
But thank you very much to all of you. It is one of the few jobs on this board that are more, people are more ungrateful for than people actually in, maybe in town government. It's more thankless being on a school board. So thank you to all of you for your time and your dedication to this. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thank you, Mr. LaSquadro. Thank you for that update. A lot of good information there. During the legislative breakfast, it was spoken about the 2027 mandate for buses and all of that. So I'm glad the state is recognizing that there has to be changes and the recognition of these real obstacles toward implementation. So that's good. Thank you for sharing that. All good. Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Yes, we have Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't know that.
With a clear conscience, I can't steal 2 more minutes of your time. I'm not a politician. But he's my neighbor and a good friend, so I can say that about him. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that most of you saw the letter I sent to the Community Journal in response to another gentleman's letter, 2 letters, that called it a turf tax, and then, so I had to respond to that. I hope you will see that. It was about 2 weeks ago. And the editor did feel it necessary to put an editor's note after my letter, saying that they did not change it in any way. That was not true. It was definitely changed biasly, and that's all I'll say about that.
Your statement was changed?
I'm sorry?
Your statement was changed?
They left out several things,
Oh, interesting.
okay? And in the other gentleman's letter, it was there.
Oh, interesting.
And then lastly was, I just hope you're following that petition. It's almost 700 now. I think we're, making a statement that hopefully that will come up as a Proposition 4 this year. And if you could put the additional turf field on the agenda for the next board meeting, I think it would be nice to discuss that as well. Thank you for all your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Williams.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you very
Mr.
much,
Williams.
appreciate that. All right. So before we go, I just wanted to thank Mr. Patinas, back there. Ricky, thank you. You and the students, thanks for staying so late
Oh,
tonight.
yeah.
We really appreciate it.
We're just
all
going to
of
be
you.
another 2 hours.
Motion to go into second exec?
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank
Don't
you.
let him stand in the lobby.
Good night.
Thank you very much. All right, may I get a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting? Katie,
Yes.
second Janelle, all in favor?
Yes.
5-0. Want to thank everyone.